Hey guys, we're live. Welcome back to my channel. If you're just now coming in, um, we are over at the courthouse, and it appears that there's some sort of a break going on at this moment. Sounds like Jim Griffin came out for the defense with the beginnings of the closing argument. And we missed a little bit of that, but court is in recess at this moment. So I'm not really sure how long of a break that they are on. I guess I'm going to run this back just to see um, where we were. I don't know if they're breaking for lunch, but they're in a recess at this moment. So I guess let's get an idea of where they were and when they're going to be coming back. So I'm going to go ahead and I just ran it back just a little bit just to get an idea of how long of a recess are we going for at this moment. Let's see.
That is so
Okay.
outlandish. I don't have a word for it.
Hey,
Totally
hey,
illogical,
ladies.
irrational, and insane. Those are the words I wrote down.
Oh,
For
okay.
someone to kill their loved ones when their criminal conduct is being exposed. You can take that now. Yeah, thank you, Doug. Yesterday we heard a lot from Mr. Waters, and I've been in Mr. Waters' position as
So, oh, it's a 10-minute recess. Okay, so we're going to just talk over this right now. We're going to run it back to the beginning when court started so we can hear like the full argument when they're done, because I would imagine after this they're going to get their jury instructions, and then so we can run it back and hear from the beginning of where they started, or we can run it back now. It's up to you guys. We could start from the beginning and hear rather than live, because it's not like they're going to get like a dun 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 moment at that time. So yeah, let's go ahead and just run it back and get it started. So that's, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That way we don't have to rely on the live anymore. This is just, we're just going to get this started, and Jim is going to go ahead and start with his closing, and that's it, and that's all. So hopefully it's not going to be like another 4-hour closing, but I guess they've said, hey, this was a 6-week trial, there's a lot of information, um and that's it. So I think a lot of people had a lot to say about that yesterday, but in any case, I mean, this guy has wreaked a lot of havoc on the streets of that community, and they had a lot to cover. Right? Hey, HBB. Hey, Life of Leisure. Liliana, Anisha, Shonda, Vicious. What's up, ladies?
Oh, right, absolutely. When they come out, we'll need to select an alternate, and the clerk has,
Oh God, more
remaining
jury trouble.
alternates in
They've
a
had
box.
to,
Any
it's a good thing
objection
that they
to a
had
blind
a
selection
robust
of that
jury, because they've had some COVID, I believe. They've had some people fall out, and they've had some fall off from the jury. So they absolutely had to pick some jurors.
Juror number
So either someone
254
called
will
out
become
sick
part
today
of
or
the
something, but they're picking alternates.
panel of the deliberating panel at this point. 254.
Okay. The jury is seated.
You may bring the jury.
Okay, guys. So live right now, I think they're at recess. We are in kind of a playback mode. So if you're watching somewhere else, we are back in time about an hour when closing arguments first started. Okay, so make no mistake. Um, this is running behind, but we were over there talking about other business on Love Lies and Lace Fronts, where we do reactions, reviews, and commentary on the YouTube channels you love to watch. So we're here now and playing. We're back on the replay. So rather than just listen to the whole thing and not really know like the context of the argument, that's what we're doing over here. So if you want to be in time live, then I'd probably go to another channel that's sharing it live at this moment. But if you're okay with running it back and you hadn't heard the beginning, we're here. Okay. So,
Morning.
okay.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Good morning,
Good morning one
everyone.
more time. Day number 28.
Day number 28.
Welcome back. Juror number 254. You are now part of the first 12 jurors. We have 13. You're part of the first 12 of the panel at this time. And the continuing with closing arguments is the defense's turn. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Wow.
I'm sorry, I had to do that.
We're at the
Let me
stage
see
of
what
the
this
case
looks
that's
like.
called closing arguments. I don't
Okay.
know why they call it argument. I'm not here to have an argument with you in any form or fashion. What I'm here to do today, this morning, is to review the evidence with you that you've heard in the courtroom over the last 6 weeks. And in reviewing this evidence, my goal is to address questions that you may have about what you've heard. And the jury system that we have, frankly, is the greatest criminal justice system in the world, because it's the only system, jury system, that a criminal defendant's fate is put in the hands of his or her peers. In this country, we don't leave the decision of guilt or innocent up to governor, to the attorney general, to the prosecutors, to the presiding judge. You, ladies and gentlemen, make that decision. And as perfect as our jury system is, there's one thing that I wish it provided: an interchange during the course of the trial between us. You're all sitting there and listening to what we say, and we don't know what questions you have and what you want answered. By the same token, we may have questions of you that we can't ask. Here's my opportunity to try to answer the questions that I think you have. There may be some things that I go over that you've already decided, and I'm wasting your time. And if I do that, I apologize. I truly do. But I don't. This case is so important. I don't want to leave anything out that one of you may have a question about. I think I can probably speak for everybody in this courtroom that there's one thing that we on this side have no question about. It's that y'all have been ideal jurors. We've been here 6 weeks, and each of you have come every day on time, and you've been very attentive, and it has not gone unnoticed. And we do appreciate you for your service. We know what a sacrifice it is, being away from your home, your work, your family, your personal obligations. Maybe some of you miss vacations. But you've been here in a 3-week trial, and here we are at the end of 6 weeks. And I want to thank you personally. I want to thank you on behalf of Mr. Harpootlian, Mr. Barber, Ms. Fox, and especially on behalf of Alec Murdaugh. In his opening statement, Mr. Harpootlian explained to you that the law governing your service requires each of you to engage in an unnatural task. In every criminal case, jurors are required to begin the process by presuming the defendant innocent. In this case, you were required under your solemn oath
Ooh, I'm not sure what's going on.
oath as we began to presume Alec Murdaugh innocent of these charges. And frankly, as he explained, that's not natural. When you hear on the news that a crime has occurred and an arrest has been made, you feel a little bit relieved. Thank God they caught him. And frankly, I would not be surprised if
Tina, just so
some
you know, or
amongst you,
anyone else coming in, we
when
are
you read in the paper
roughly,
that Alec
we're right at an hour behind. Court was in a recess. The recess has actually just come back to live. But since a lot of us were over at Love, Lies, and Lace Fronts, finishing up a live, and I don't want to watch twice, I went back to when closing arguments started. So anyone coming in at this moment, yes, it's not live at this moment. It's live. We're rerunning back about an hour from when Jim took the floor for closing arguments, rather than have to watch live and not really know the full scope of his presentation. But court is back in session if you want to go back and watch it live. But we're about an hour behind from when court went into session. Okay, so and I think that interruption was the broadcaster going back to the courtroom.
Murdaugh was charged the murder of wife and son, that you thought, oh, good, they got him. But those opinions, and each of you, when you filled out your questionnaire, agreed and affirmed that you would leave those at the door of the courthouse and that you would decide this case solely on the evidence. And that's what the law requires. And when we begin, the law also requires you to presume him innocent of these charges. Now, I've been doing this a long, long time, and up until the advent of instant replay in sports, it's been very difficult to explain just how to do that to jurors, how jurors can do this, apply this presumption of innocence. And if you're not as interested in sports, I apologize for this analogy, but the analogy is the instant replay. Whether you're a Clemson fan or Georgia fan, that on a Saturday afternoon, there's a play called on the field, and then it's reviewed. And under the rules, the call on the field stands unless there's visual, incontrovertible evidence that the call on the field was wrong. We see that every weekend on sports. Here, the call on the field is that Alec Murdaugh is innocent of these charges. That's what the law requires. And that unless and until the state proves his guilt to each one of you individually, voting individually, proves his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, then that presumption of innocence stays with him. You're not being tasked here to give your opinion in this trial. You're being tasked to apply the Constitution, the bedrock principles that protect us all from a government. Those bedrock principles are, first, you get tried by a jury of your peers. Second, that the jury of your peers begin with presuming you innocent. And third, that you will remain innocent until the government, if they can, proves to you individually in your mind that the person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the judge will give you jury instructions on what that means, beyond a reasonable doubt. But the definition has been defined that reasonable doubt is doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate when making an important decision in their personal affairs, such as to buy a house, get married, any consequential decision. And you will be making, when you get this case, probably later this afternoon, you'll be making one of the most consequential decisions that you will have ever made in your life, I suspect. I don't know all of your backgrounds, but it will be a very consequential decision. And if the proof that the state has put before you causes you to hesitate, when you go to fill out that vote as you're deliberating in your jury room, each of you will have a vote. And you will have the right to vote guilty or not guilty. And each of you will write it down. And if there's any reasonable cause for you to hesitate to write guilty, then the law requires you to write not guilty. This burden of proof that we have, many of you may have had experience with civil cases. And in civil cases, the burden of proof is much lower, and it's called by preponderance of the evidence. And you may have seen lawyers or judges or watched on TV as they give a visual image of Lady Justice, who's blind and who's blindfolded, so she does not bias from one side or the other. And there's scales on Lady Justice. And those scales are the scales of justice. And in a civil case, if one party proves their case by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning ever so slightly tilt those scales in their favor, then they're entitled to the verdict. There's another heightened level of burden of proof in a civil case called by clear and convincing evidence. And the law requires things like to prove fraud or some intentional acts. You have to prove by clear and convincing evidence. And that's an intermediate level of proof. And so it's not just tilt the scales ever so slightly in the favor of the party that prevails, but you have to get sort of 3/4 of the way there. But now proof beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard of proof the law recognizes. And it is, you have to tilt the scales all the way to one side in order for the state to meet their burden. Now, a little bit about the verdict. You will have an option of guilty or not guilty. My friend Dick Harpootlian over here he travels a lot. He's been to a lot of countries, and he frequently, he recently returned from Scotland, where he attended a jury trial in Scotland. And he tells me it's much like this, except the lawyers wear a wig, and I might benefit from something like that. But in Scotland, it runs about the same until it gets time to the verdict in the criminal case. And the jury in Scotland, where we derive our laws from, and they are given 3 options. One option is guilty. Second option is not guilty. And the third option is not proven. Not proven. Now here in America, we have combined the verdict of innocent and not proven into one of not guilty. And so when you go to render your verdict, if it's a verdict of not guilty, it's either you concluded that the defendant is innocent of the charges, or that the government has not met their burden of proof, their heavy burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, and one of the reasons that defendants are presumed innocent and the government has such a high burden is because in criminal cases, the defendant really doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the lawful authority to execute search warrants, subpoena documents, to prove his or her innocence. And so a defendant cannot secure a crime scene, cannot lift a crime scene for fingerprints, shoe-wear impressions, cannot secure telephones and get electronic data in the course of an investigation. So the defendant is limited on what they can do. In this case, on June 7th, 2021, Alec Murdaugh called 911, and Officer Deputy Green, and then followed by other deputies, rolled up on the scene. And he is standing on his property. His wife and son lie dead in a pool of blood each. He's within yards of him, and he just put a shotgun down. He just put a shotgun down. And what would that look like? 90 out of 100 cases when an officer rolls up, it would look like the person who had the shotgun and 2 dead bodies may have done it, probably have done it. Certainly is someone who should be strongly considered. And all the officers in this case told you that. Deputy Rutland said, yeah, Alec Murdaugh was a suspect, but there are a lot of suspects out there. Everybody was a suspect. Fair enough. Agent Owen says, well, you know, we have a circle, investigative circle, and it starts with immediate family members, particularly if they found the deceased, the victims. So he's in the circle by virtue of calling 911. And that's fair enough. But what doesn't strike us as fair is that the next morning on June the 8th, after the gruesome murders of Maggie and Paul, this is what is issued, a joint press release, Colleton County and SLED, that says, at this time, there's no danger to the public. At this time, there's no danger to the public. We have 2 people have been executed within, y'all are out there, I don't know, is it 100 yards, 200 yards from Moselle Road? They've been slaughtered. And at this time, there's no danger to the public. Does that tell you that on June 8th, law enforcement had decided it had to be Alec Murdaugh? It's a fair question for you to ask yourselves. It's a question that's not been fairly answered in this trial. What we know from June 7th to June 8th, Alec is a suspect and he's in the circle. And from that day forward, he is at the mercy. He is at the mercy of the ability of SLED to exclude him from that circle. They have the ability to do the forensic work. They have the ability to interview witnesses, and they have the ability to gather electronic data. And we believe that we've shown conclusively that SLED failed miserably in investigating this case. And had they done a competent job, that Alec would have been excluded from that circle a year ago, 2 years ago, but he would have been excluded. What did you hear from the witness stand? You heard from Chief Barry McCroy. I didn't know Chief McCroy until I got involved in this case, but his reputation is outstanding, and he's a consummate professional. And he explained that when he got there, he was concerned that cars would be pulling up and there were some tire tracks that were not being protected and that they could have evidentiary value. And then you heard from Mark Ball, who had a conversation with Sheriff Hill, who's another fine public servant here. And he also agreed, we've got to stop cars from coming in here to preserve these tire impressions. And it was not done. It was not done. Captain Chapman from the Colleton County Sheriff's Office, he testified about seeing other sets of tire tracks. As you had came in off Moselle Road, you probably saw where Deputy Green's vehicle had stopped right at the kennels. But then on the other side, where you saw that Alec was parked and pacing on some of these videos, that's where Captain Chapman had talked about seeing tire tracks, and he tried to track them. SLED was coming on, and then it was like a trail to nowhere. It was a trail to nowhere. Deputy Rutland talked about seeing hair in Maggie's hands, you'll recall. You didn't hear anything about the hair in Maggie's hands from that moment forward. Was it tested? Was it sent off for analysis? There was no evidence of what if anything happened to the hair in Maggie's hands? Was it as a result of a struggle with her assailant? Was it her own hair? I mean, we don't know the answer to that. We know they failed to take fingerprints from the feed room, and they should have. They failed to properly take footwear impressions from the feed room or at the apron right outside the feed room. And I think that's I don't think that's uncontradicted. The Agent Worley, who doing the best she can, did not go there to document footwear impressions. Did not do that. You heard from our expert, Mr. Zerchi, what is required. And I believe Dr. Kinsey also agreed it was not done. I know Mr. Palmbach did. And both, now I'll get to the shot angles in a little bit, but both Dr. Kinsey and Mr. Palmbach had this murderer for Paul standing on the concrete. Whether 1 foot's in, 1 foot's out, both feet are in, but there should have been footwear impressions. But we'll never know because it was not preserved. It was not taken. The thing that has baffled us, has completely baffled us, is why did they never take DNA samples off of Maggie's clothes, her dress? Why did they never take DNA samples off Paul's clothes? They never did. They never did. And we asked their investigators, why didn't you? Well, that's somebody else's job. That's somebody else's job. It was never done. But you know whose clothing they took DNA off of extensively? Alec. And you heard Agent Zapata talk about all the different grids on her shirt where DNA was samples were taken. Was Alec assaulted on June the 7th? No, he wasn't assaulted. Was Alec wrestling with the assailant on June the 7th? There's no evidence of that. So why are they taking DNA evidence of Alec's clothing in June of 2021? And there's only one reason. And it goes back to this right here. There was only one reason. Only one reason. Is that they had decided that unless we find somebody else, it's going to be Alec. Unless we find somebody else, it's going to be Alec. And I'll get into more detail about Maggie's phone. And Maggie's phone was not secured properly. Maggie's phone was, well, let me just go right into it. Maggie's phone was found on the side of the road in the morning or early afternoon on June the 8th. Whoever killed her threw that phone on the side of the road, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Alec, from the get-go, has said, you get Maggie's phone, you get my phone, or you get my OnStar data, and you will not see my car traveling down the road with Maggie's phone, because it did not happen. It could not happen. Take the Owen. Have you gotten it yet? No, we've not. We sent the black box from on the Chevy to the FBI. It was a new model. Turns out the data's encrypted, and so we haven't got it yet. Well, what about General Motors? I mean, I'll do what I have to do, whatever I can do. And so, well, you know, we're looking into it. Well, what we learned during this trial is, sure, SLED sent a subpoena via a fax machine to somebody in Detroit, I believe. And whoever got it in Detroit Whether there was a number off, I have no idea what the reason was. But we do know the initial response was, we don't have anything. We don't have any OnStar data that you're looking for. There's no indication that SLED followed up with a phone call. There's no indication SLED followed up with a letter. There's no indication SLED did anything other than put it in a file, put the response in a file. And that was it. That was it, ladies and gentlemen, until somebody watching this trial somewhere contacted somebody at General Motors and said, why don't you guys cooperate with the FBI and SLED on this investigation? And like, what are you talking about? So Friday, during sometime in the last 6 weeks, lo and behold, here comes all the OnStar data that you got to see. And that would be great. That would be great. But for the fact that when they seized Maggie's phone, it had, they put it in airplane mode. They knew how to put it in airplane mode. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Let me get water. I apologize. Oh, there's pollen, something else. They put it in airplane mode, but what you'll see, I got a photograph, is the location services were still on, meaning still pinging off GPS satellites. And the phones don't hold that much memory. They hold a lot of data, as we have learned, but they don't hold that much memory. And it writes over itself. And for GPS location services, the ping points that we see from Paul's phone on all that data, that would have been on Maggie's phone for the 7th. But for the fact that it wasn't extracted until sometime in like June 16th. I think that's the date, but if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it's around the middle of June. And that ping information that we see on Paul's phone, for Maggie's phone, it goes back to like June the 9th. Well, a lot of good that does. We don't have it. We would have had it had they extracted it earlier. And that Agent Dove says we didn't have an upgraded software that would read it. Took us a while to get it. I don't know why it took them a while to get it. There's really no explanation about that. But you heard about Faraday bags. Put it in the Faraday bag. So it's not pinging against satellites, not overriding. They didn't do that. And it's lost. Had they done it, I hope we wouldn't be here. I hope, because I know it would say, because we have enough evidence in the record, and we have to go around our elbow to get to our thumb to get there. But there is sufficient evidence in the record that shows Alec Murdaugh was not driving down the road, Moselle Road, with Maggie's phone in the car and tossed it at whatever time. When he went by at 9:08. I don't know what time they think it was tossed, but that would have gotten him out of the circle. I would hope, but probably not. Because they've been so focused.
I just want to say something here. So obviously Jim is running with the argument that there was a rush to judgment and that they made up their mind when they arrived to the scene that he was probably the one. Look, they're police officers. They can do that, right? Number one, there's nothing wrong with that, right? If they feel like I've shown up to 500 crime scenes and this is what typically happens, they can have a presumption. They're there to do police work. So at the end of the day, if their police work is making them think that something is fishy, right? Second thing, the man had a firearm after 911 told him not to go get one. So he went ahead and deliberately muddied the waters. These guys, Jim and Dick and Alex, seem to be masters at manipulating and doing the old flip of the script and really creating a lot of confusion and mayhem and song and dance in this whole entire defense to scramble up people's brains and to make them feel stupid and to also make them question their better judgment. That's just what I'm hearing. Another thing that the state needs to walk away with is a top to bottom internal investigation on how the state or the police or SLED comes in, no matter who the hell it is, and has a process on how to process a scene, no matter if someone is doing the fool or there's nobody there. At the end of the day, these are the process, this is the procedure. This is the process on a forensic investigation. This is the process on a autopsy. This is what we need for a case. We need to have, this is 10 criteria. We need you to at least have 6 items checked off of the autopsy or report findings. We need to have x-rays. This is a complete opportunity for the state of South Carolina to step up and get with the times. Fortunately, if you live in a place where crime is not plentiful and double murders are not happening on a regular basis, then that's awesome. But at the end of the day, shit happens. And these people need to be prepared because this guy has been wreaking havoc on the community at large for a very long time. And if this guy gets off, it's nobody's fault but everybody's fault. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who turned a blind eye to this guy and his mayhem and his nonsense and his shenanigans. And law enforcement was way too cozy with this guy. He had a bunch of friends in high places that were probably not comfortable confronting a friend on some fuck shit. Let's just be honest. So hopefully the jury will see through the bullshit. But at the end of the day, this is a tremendous opportunity. You've got the state attorney general sitting there in the audience. You've got the Supreme Court of South Carolina appointed this judge to sit at this case. There's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of place here where people can step up and do better. So hopefully that's the takeaway from this whole thing. There's 2 people that are dead. There's a lot of people who are out of money. It's just horrible all the way around. And if this guy gets off, it's everybody's fault. It's not ours. Bougie Gang is not responsible, but the yahoos of the people of South Carolina who turned a blind eye and allowed this man to have so much privilege and privilege that was cashed in for power and influence and all kinds of stuff, for him to even think to either to have something to look, for his wife and son to be dead at this moment. That's a lot of people are going to have to take some ownership on that. That's just my opinion.
On him. Now, as I mentioned, Alec asked multiple times. I think the testimony was 5 times. Agent Owen, if you get this data, it will show I wasn't there. And we didn't learn why they didn't get it off Alec's phone until very recently, because you'll remember on June 10th, he gave SLED his phone. Yeah, you can copy it. Please copy it. Because it'll show that I wasn't driving. Now, my phone was not with Maggie's phone at any point in time, going down the road, and I did what I said I did. Well, they did extract it, but what we've learned, the extraction was a superficial extraction. Not because Alec requested it, that's just what they did. Said a logical surface extraction. So they didn't go in and pull out any GPS ping data like you see on Paul's phone.
Ashanti, I agree with you. I think that he would have done better to did his homework last night and went point by point of Mr. Waters. Is it Waters, Crichton Waters? Presentation, and boom, boom, boom. Like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe that is what he's doing, but he's so hopefully these people are not, I hope these people have their wits about them. These people are master manipulators. These people are paid to convince the unconvinced. This is their job. And there's a lot of people who are able, but sometimes you have to accept responsibility like, oh shit, I fell for the okie doke. I just got bamboo. Did I just get flim flam? Like at the end of the day, the state is here to protect all of our interests and the common good. And this man right here, everyone deserves their day in court. But yeah, this is a horrible closing argument. It's moving very slow, but let's keep listening. I mean, it's interesting nonetheless. Let's keep going.
Now, if Alec had not made those requests to Owen, and they are disputing that, it's one thing you can be 100% sure of, is they would have called Detective Owen up here on the witness stand during their rebuttal case to say, no, he lied. He didn't ask that of me. I mean, they got Sheriff Smalls in here to say, I didn't give him permission to put a blue light in his car. They came and challenged whether he had authority from the sheriff or maybe a deputy sheriff to put a blue light in his car. But they didn't contradict anything he said about, I've been asking for this data that would get me out of the circle. And now we know why it took so long.
Okay, guys, I'm going to do a little bit of research. What I'm seeing is we just witnessed the judge replace a juror. On court TV, they're saying Judge Newman has dismissed a juror in the Alex Murdaugh trial. The juror communicated with at least 3 people on the opinion of the case and was replaced with an alternate. What do you think? I don't know. Maybe they're going to move for a mistrial. I'm not sure. I mean, I would imagine he would have done that by now when they heard of it. But I'm not really sure. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to see what I can find out and I'll come back to you guys. But that's the reason why Judge Newman replaced a juror. There had been some illness, but there was someone who has been running their yapper who got replaced for jury misconduct. So that was what that was about.
I mean, because the FBI wouldn't go to General Motors on this event data. The FBI was up there and they bought a Suburban, they're riding it around and they're reverse engineering all these systems to try to come up reports. And they come in here and tell you, well, it's not complete, someone's inaccurate, but this is what we got. And during the middle of all that, that's when, lo and behold, we get on start. Thankfully, we did. But, so then we roll into Labor Day weekend of 2021, where Alex, longtime drug problem, his financial issues, misconduct were exposed. And that made him an easy target for SLED. And I hate to say this, but the evidence is crystal clear. From that moment, they started fabricating evidence against Alec. And Mr. Griffin, that's an awful charge. Don't all lawyers accuse law enforcement of fabricating evidence? And I can tell you, this guy right here was a federal prosecutor, was a state prosecutor, and some of my best friends are in law enforcement. And I don't make that claim lightly. Here, what you have heard is they came up with a report that says Alex's t-shirt had high velocity blood spatter on it. High velocity blood spatter. What's that? That means you're within feet of a shooting. And they didn't just say any shooting.
Y'all don't kill me. Okay, I'm over here on the Daily Mail. A juror was booted off Alex Murdaugh murder trial after she was caught discussing evidence with at least 3 outsiders. I don't know how she was caught, but as the court erupts in laughter when she asked the bailiff to get her eggs from the jury room. Her eggs? Girl. Judge Clifton Newman said she had been, by all accounts, a great juror, adding that her misconduct did not involve offering an opinion on the evidence. After the dismissal, Newman asked if there were any belongings she needed the bailiff to retrieve from the jury room. I got a dozen eggs, she told the judge. Laughter erupted as Newman joked, "You want to leave the eggs or take the eggs?" The juror in the Alex Murdaugh trial was this morning kicked off the case after discussing evidence with people outside the court as the gallery erupted with laughter when she asked the judge if she could get her eggs. Judge Clifton Newman summoned the juror to dismiss her for discussing the trial with at least three people, but he said she had been a great juror and that her misconduct had not been deliberate. "You have been, by all accounts, a great juror and smiled consistently and seemingly been attentive to the case and performed well," Judge Newman said. "I am not suggesting that you intentionally did anything wrong, but in order to preserve the integrity of the process and in fairness to all parties involved, we are going to replace you with one of the other jurors." After the dismissal, Newman asked if there was any belongings she needed. Okay, we already heard about that. Laughter in the courtroom. I know she's going to feel kind of ridiculed by that whole thing. Not that he did, but the fact that people laughed at her because girl, eggs are expensive. Maybe she made friends with someone and they have a hen laying eggs. Anyway, she said she did. Newman told the bailiff, "Can you please retrieve from the jury room her dozen of eggs, her purse, and what else? A bottle of water." After she left, Newman smiled and told the court, "I have heard a lot of things, but not a dozen of eggs." Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian earlier said he was not happy about how the juror issue was investigated by South Carolina law enforcement. There goes SLED. Let me tell you something. They're trying to make SLED out to be some type of notorious bad guy. That's the adversary here. So this is, I would wonder, and this is just me throwing it out, there's always the distrust, not I don't say there always, there is a distrust of law enforcement, right? This person, and I'm just going to say a white man, with lots of privilege, and it's not necessarily, look, this guy has flexed a lot of privilege. Now all of a sudden the police are out to get you. You had blue lights and a badge, sir. You were in law enforcement. You were a solicitor. Your dad, your granddad, your great granddad, 100 years of influence in your town. Now all of a sudden the police are out to get you. Why? What did you do to SLED? Why all of a sudden is SLED out to get you? Like all of a sudden it's law enforcement. Like I'm just finding that a little bit kind of, let's just jump on law enforcement. Law enforcement is bad. There was a rush to judgment, all kinds of stuff. I don't believe this. Anyway, Harpootlian said one of the investigators was a witness in the trial. So one of the people who was a witness in the trial is one of the people who observed her having some sort of conversation. So what did they think, that was a juror who may have felt that they thought was sympathetic, that they're trying to sift out the jury of people who may vote in favor of Alex for either a not guilty. So they're going to, make SLED again a reason why Alex has been unfair. So they're already like working on their appeal or just whatever. So it's just interesting to me. Harpootlian said one of the investigators was a witness in the trial. Another was involved in work on the murder case. The defense attorney said, so all of these people who have oaths and are operating under licenses, he thinks are colluding together to affect the jury. Like, just because your client is an admitted liar and had his hands in everything doesn't mean that everybody else does. Like, they are really trying. South Carolina is looking kind of bad right now because they make it seem like, damn, everything is some shade and some tea and everybody got everything going on. And is that really the case? My goodness. The defense attorney said SLED had made another bad judgment in this case, and this is just a continuum of a calamity of errors. The 11th hour jury reshuffle comes as Murdaugh's lawyers are laying out their closing arguments this morning in a last-ditch effort to convince the jury that their client did not kill his wife and son. Murdaugh the 54-year-old scion of influential legal family in an area of West Charleston, has been charged with fatally shooting his wife Maggie, 52, and youngest son, 22, at the dog kennels on their estate on the night of June 7th, 21. He faces 30 years to life in prison if found guilty. Murdaugh's attorney will be following the state's lead prosecutor, Crichton Waters, in final remarks to the jury on Wednesday that portrayed Murdaugh as a serial liar and argued that only he could have committed the murders. And that's pretty much, well, there's more. The case has drawn intense media coverage. I'm going to just, we already know because we're watching, but I will post a link to this article in the chat, and let's continue.
Said in their report, it says, as a result of Paul's murder, high velocity blood spatter on a shirt as a result of Paul's murder. That was number one. Well, let's stick with number one. Why do I say that is fabricated? Well, you heard Agent Zapata said we did hemotrace confirmatory blood tests on that shirt. That means there was two types of tests. There's a presumptive test, which is what they use a product called LCV that makes it turn purple, where it might be blood, but it turns purple on other agents as well, including bleach. You heard. You also heard that the shirt came out of the bag wet and it smelled like detergent. Anyway, they spray it, it turns purple in places. So they think, well, that must be blood. Next thing they do at the SLED lab is they do a confirmatory test to see if it's blood. 0 for 74, not blood, not blood. That didn't stop SLED from going out and pursuing with vengeance this report. They didn't give the no blood test result to the guy in Oklahoma, and when it surfaced, they had a problem on their hands, and they were pushing it up until this trial. And you heard the testimony from the stand that they went from Mr. Bloody Shirt leading up to this trial to Mr. Clean during this trial. And they asked him, and they raised issues during the trial with Waka, where were his clothes? No one's asking about the man's clothes that he had on the Snapchat video back in, at 7 o'clock with his son until November or so, I think is what she said. The issue of changing clothes, it was late to the dance, because when they went to, as you heard, when they went to the Collin County Grand Jury to get an indictment that you're going to be deliberating on, they told that grand jury they had an expert report that says high velocity blood spatter. And I asked Agent Owen, I said, when you went to the grand jury and when your guy gave you the report, how'd you not know, you chief investigator, how'd you not know that there's this hemotrace test that says it's no blood? Well, I didn't get the email. I say it in somewhat jest, but should the dog eat his email? I mean, how's the lead investigator in the case not get the lab report that says there's no blood on the shirt? Now, ultimately, it was produced to us, and we were raising Cain about it and saying, how can you say this on one hand and that on the other hand? And here we are with a Mr. Clean theory.
I mean, there's no blood on the shirt because that's not the shirt that he wore at the time of the incident, because his clothes are missing. Like, duh.
Butt naked, I guess, and drives to the house. So that's the blood spatter fabrication. The other is this blue raincoat with GSR, and do you remember that testimony? Shelley Smith, who worked for Ms. Libby and Mr. Randolph, had told SLED after September, after Aleka's problems had been exposed, after she had a conversation with a Allendale police officer following an accident investigation, in which she was in an accident, that on the morning, she said here, as she told you, on Wednesday after Mr. Randolph's funeral, that turns out to be, I think, June 16th, that Alec shows up at the house at Almeda at like 6:30 in the morning, knocking, trying to get in, and he has a blue tarp. And in this blue tarp, she lets him in. He goes upstairs with his blue tarp. He comes back downstairs. He lays this blue tarp out on Ms. Libby's retirement rocking chair in the living room, and then he leaves. And then she leaves, to go to her day job. And when she left, I believe Tark was laying out on Ms. Libby's rocking chair. That was her testimony. And so SLED gets that, gets a search warrant, goes to Alameda, and they seize a blue rain jacket. And when they do, they take that blue rain jacket and they show it to just about every family member. Let me get it right quick. That they can think of, and it's defendant's 87, Doug, if you can pull it up. But they show this blue rain jacket to all as many family members as they can get in contact with, and the rain jacket is and no one recognizes it, no one sees it, no one said Alex ever worn it, no one said Paul's ever worn it, no one said Buster's ever worn it, no one said Maggie's ever worn it. Have not seen this blue rain jacket. One more thing about this blue rain jacket. When they did the search at Alameda, John Marvin was there. And John Marvin asked him, did you find anything? And he said, well, we found a blue rain jacket back on the property. And he said, well, my dad drives a buggy around and maybe it fell off the back of his buggy. Clearly, John Marvin was understanding that it was back on the property. And then they asked him to come look at the blue rain jacket, and he was told it was found in the closet. And he said, that didn't sound right. And they never clarified it. Now here's a picture. I'm not even gonna put it up, but 411 is a picture of this closet. And you can see the blue rain jacket that's just sort of folded up and stuff down here at the bottom right. That's the blue rain jacket. And apparently right before this trial, they showed Shelley Smith this picture and says, does that look like the blue tarp you saw? Said, well, yeah, sure, it looks like it. He never showed her this.
I think there's obviously some smart people. I think Jim likes to play with people and talk to them like they're dumb. I think he knows his way around that courtroom.
But they did GSR testing on this.
Is that too fast for you guys? I did speed it up.
It's hot. A lot of GSR. Manufactured evidence, ladies and gentlemen. And then there's this issue of misrepresenting what are the type ammunition found in the shotguns at the residence at Moselle. Paul was murdered with first shot was a buckshot. Went to his chest. He was turned this way, went in here, and then out under his arm, and that was buckshot. The second shot was into the head, either depending what expert and what pathologist, it's either this way or this way, but into the head, and that was still a duck shot. I learned that you can't shoot ducks with anything but steel pellets because they don't want lead in the water. So you got to have steel pellets. And then A.J. Owen testified, admitted begrudgingly that he had testified to the grand jury that there were 4 weapons found up on the property in the gun room, 12 gauges that were loaded, or I'm not saying 12 gauges, I'm sorry, 4 shotguns that were loaded with buckshot and birdshot. There's 4 other ones. So that matches. Well, guess what? Totally not true. That was totally not true. And he admitted on the stand it was not true. He admitted telling Alec during the interview, and he said, well, I can do trickery. And we're going to see that shortly. But and then I said, are you trying to trick the grand jury? No, I didn't say that. Well, we walked through it, and he did say it. And he didn't remember it, and you'll remember the testimony. And I said, well, people make mistakes, don't you? Yeah, that was a mistake. And it's okay to make mistakes, right? Yeah. And you can make mistakes about time. Well, that's the most common thing people make mistakes about. It's not all right for Alec Murdaugh, who's in the center of the circle, who's not all right for him to make mistakes about time. It is not all right, according to the same investigator who says it's okay, happens all the time. But here we go. And then Eureka. They finally get into Paul's phone in April of 2022, and they see Alec. Well, they don't see Alec. They see Cash the dog, and they see Paul's feet walking around, and they hear voices in the background. One of them sounds like Alec. And off they go. They go off and get an indictment from the Cullinan County Grand Jury, relying upon high velocity blood spatter, relying upon 4 guns having the same load, and relying upon a a rain jacket that's got GSR on it, and Alex lying about being down at the kennels. Now we know, after we've been here 6 weeks, of those 4 things,
voice privacy contacts have been updated. To continue, review the updated items on your screen.
I'm so sorry. No, that was turned on. I will turn it on.
I mean, this is not a
What we know
smooth
is,
presentation, just to, kind of chime in. This is not a smooth presentation. It's not, I feel like you think he's speaking low, you can't hear him. I think that he is, I don't know if he's overwhelmed at the gravity of or the gravitas, let's say it like that, of the case. Maybe he's overwhelmed at the amount of pressure of the Murdaugh. I always get caught up on Murdaugh, family. I don't know, but he seems to be shook. Would you guys say, any of you guys listening right now, does he appear to be shook to you? Somebody with the amount of experience that this guy has and the gravitas of this case, and this is your friend and colleague, I would imagine you would be on your best. You would be on your shit right now. And it seems like he's either didn't have a good breakfast and he's shook. I'm not impressed by this argument or presentation, even, if you will. Like, I'm not hearing anything that's kind of like, oh, okay. I think he's trying to go with it's cool when they do it, but it's a problem when I do it. Well, they didn't kill Maggie and Pawpaw, but he's being accused of it, so it doesn't matter.
3 out of those 4 things that was presented to the Collin County Grand Jury that you're going to be deliberating on for the indictments that return aren't true. No blood spatter, no GSR rain jacket that's ever been connected to Alex whatsoever, and there's no loaded gun. So we're left with the lie. We are left with the lie. Now, Alex lied about being down at the kennels in Almeida. And why did he lie? And that is certainly a fair question. And that's, and frankly, I probably wouldn't be sitting over there right now. He had not lied, but he did lie. And he told you he lied. And he told you why he lied. He said he lied because, I'll tell you, he lied because that's what addicts do. Addicts lie.
I just don't believe he's an addict. I don't think he ever was.
Any more scrutiny on him, which is the most ironic thing in the world because.
Oh, you said he's talking slow.
Their theory is that he slaughtered his wife and son to distract from a impending financial investigation. But he puts himself in the middle of a murder investigation, and he puts himself in the spotlight of a media firestorm. That's their motive. So we'll get to that. But he lied. He lied because of his drug paranoia kicked in, and he was clearly in the throes of addiction. He lied for all those reasons. But what he didn't lie for is because he was covering up the fact that he killed Maggie and Paul. That is not the reason.
Well, I don't think he was taking $50,000 a week. I think.
Doug, will you play the dog kennel video?
I don't know what it was, but I'm
gonna play the dog kennel video.
He still had his wits about him. I'll put it that way. Do you see how pretty that dog's coat was?
4 minutes later, the state would have you to believe that Alec Murdaugh up and blew his son's brains out of his head and murders his wife after having that conversation about Bubba having a chicken or a guinea 4 minutes later. Their case wants you to believe that this is a family down at the dog kennels doing what families do. They're checking on a dog, tail, Bubba's out running around, and they're saying, Bubba, got a chicken. Now, why would Alec not want law enforcement to hear that? I mean, there's nothing on that tape. There's nothing on that tape that indicates there's any strife, any conflict, any anger, any planning, anybody being afraid, anybody running, anybody scurrying. Nothing. Maggie, Paul, and Alec down at the kennel. That's it. And their timeline is based on the fact that this automated thing kind of messed me up, but the point I was going to open this up and say, under their theory, if your phone's not moving for some period of time, you're dead right then. You could be run over in the traffic 2 hours later, but if you're not answering a text 2 minutes after you receive it, you're dead at that point. And that's their case. That is their case on time of death. Is phone stop moving, you're dead. You've heard testimony from a lot of witnesses. I would say practically every witness who took the stand, who actually knew Alec and Maggie and Paul and Buster, testified under oath how much Alec adored Maggie. She was his all. Some people describe Paul as Alec's best friend. His relationship with him was awesome. And that was unanimous. Unanimous. I want to just play briefly a clip from Blanca testimony about Alec's relationship with.
There are people that love you and hate you simultaneous. Look at Scott.
Also,
Look at Scott and Lacey Peterson. I mean, the list goes on. I'm sure I could name a ton, but
Mag.
So it looks like that a sidebar. I don't know. The judge is probably like, I don't know what they're going with this case. Is that the attorney general right there, guys? It's like, I think this is a mess.
Please continue that.
Very weak.
Isn't that what you told us, Lay?
Yes, sir.
What does that mean? Maggie was his all.
He adored her. He loved her. He adored her.
Worshipped her. I mean, just treated her as somebody he adored, correct?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Now, this was her testimony from the witness stand. Then in every trial, there's, you hope you find, some very authentic witness, part of the fabric of America that comes in this courtroom. And we had it in this case, and it's Dale Davis. And I want you to remember what Dale testified about Alec's relationship with his family. We played Dale Davis's.
When you use the phrase lovey-dovey about Alec and Maggie, what does that mean? It means they love each other. What, in your presence, you described them as being lovey-dovey, didn't you? Yes. And tell the jury what you meant by that. Oh, every time I always say them, I've never seen that man even raise his voice at his wife or kids. Or his wife. I've never seen him even, none of them argue. But he always, anything she wanted or the boys wanted, he would try to get it. And what was your observation about the relationship with Paul? They like to hunt and fish together. I mean, they drink beer together. Okay.
That was Dale Davis. Which brings us to the question, why? Why would Alec Murdaugh on June 7th execute his son Paul and his wife Maggie, who he adored and loved? Why? The state's theory is that it was a storm a-coming, clouds are arising, and that his financial house of cards is about to collapse, and he's about to be exposed. And because of that, he does what every rational person would do: go kill your wife and son. That is their theory of motive. That is their theory of motive. Oh, and it worked too, by the way, because he killed his wife and son. Guess what? Jeannie Seconder quit asking questions for a few weeks. Oh, in the Bowden case, ooh, that won't be worth anything now that his wife and son have been murdered because he's sympathetic. Have you heard such? One thing.
I'm sorry. After the way that Dick Harpootlian went at the coroner or the medical examiner and damn near made that lady cry on the stand, Jim knows good and damn well that Alex used to throw his damn 6-foot, big, tall, I guess, pill addicted self around that damn office when his paralegal brought up the fact that that $700,000 plus check was missing. He tried to make it seem to Jeannie like she was being messy. Okay. And at the end of the day, the reason why Jeannie stopped asking questions was because the man sat up there talking about his father was on his deathbed and his wife and them just got killed. So she didn't stop investigating. She stopped asking questions. But if you listen to her testimony, I mean, the damn evidence kept coming in. She was intrigued by how deep this rabbit hole was going. And she continued to start to look to make sure and do her due diligence as the person who has fiduciary responsibility over that damn law firm. So it doesn't mean that her investigation stopped. They backed off of him as being considerate, considering also the fact that she was HR. She led all of corporate operations at the law firm. And if you have a employee in distress, it's not their job, even though this is a law firm, to continue to apply pressure. As someone who is managing finance and corporate services, including HR, you have an employee who's in distress. You have an employee who has lost close family members in a tragedy. The last thing that you're going to do is continue to point the finger, pile on, and make accusations on something that still is being investigated. At the end of the day, the check still hadn't been produced. So the ball was in his court to produce the check. So it's not like the law firm didn't see any urgency. Are they kidding? Alex stole damn near $10 million worth of money. And he's trying to make it seem like it's not that big of a deal. I hope the jury really gets how he's trying to talk to, like, he's really talking to them stupid. I think he thinks these people are dumb, or maybe they don't remember the details, or he's just so used to talking down to people. I just hope that this jury really is remembering all of these details. Because I mean, I don't have notes and I'm remembering, but
Mr.
I'm
Waters
also
and I
not
agree
there
on
in the courtroom.
Best thing about jurors is you bring your common sense in here and you use your common sense. And that's what it's all about. That's what your collective wisdom. And just collectively think, individually think, what kind of sense does that make? Alex, his financial house is a wreck. He's stealing money from clients. He's got to produce a financial statement, maybe, in a hearing coming up. And his dad goes back in the hospital that day. His dad goes back in the hospital that day and he hopefully dies a few days later. Okay. So I get a call. Jeannie comes in. My dad's going to the hospital. Paul's coming home. That'd be a good time to kill Paul, wouldn't it? That is their theory of the case. And if you don't accept that beyond a reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I submit the verdict has to be not guilty. Because there's no reason for him to do it. No reason whatsoever. Now, you've heard a lot of testimony about these financial crimes, misdeeds. And he told you he did it. He told you he did it to support a very expensive drug habit, and none of that's an excuse, but he is an addict, and addiction is real. And addicts lie, addicts cheat, addicts steal to keep getting their drug. The evidence was permitted in this case for you to hear solely to consider, did he murder his wife and son because he had this storm coming? He's going to be exposed. Is that why he murdered? That's what they say. That's why he murdered. And that's why you're allowed to consider it. Now, Judge Newman in his jury instructions will tell you that's all you can consider it for. You can't consider it by saying, man, I never knew he could do that. So if he could do that, he must be able to do the most heinous crimes in the world, kill his wife and son, execute him style. I mean, that's a no use of that evidence. The only permissible use of the evidence is that sufficient provocation, motive for him to kill his wife and son? Is it sufficient motive, not provocation? And the evidence in the case is that there was no impending financial doom on June 7th. June 7th was a day which, frankly, was no different than any other day in the frenetic lifestyle of Alec Murdaugh. He had so many balls in the air. And even, I forgot his paralegal's name, and I apologize to her. I think Christy. She said he would come in like a Tasmanian devil. I mean, he was frenetic. And they were on to this $792,000 fee in the Ferris case. And they were asking questions.
You forgot the name of the person who kicked the can down the road for all of this to unravel. Oh, that's interesting.
Sheltering money, trying to hide it from being disclosed in the voting litigation, which he was a defendant. And they didn't want any part of that. And that situation with the voting, with the Ferris fee, as Ms. Seconder, Jean Seconder said, that was a one-off. That was completely on its own, different type conduct than all the other stuff that you heard about. That was a one-off. And what happened on June 7th? She says, I'm in his office, and he gets a phone call that his dad's put back in the hospital. And she thinks that he told her it was terminal. He may have, I don't know, but his dad is put back in the hospital. He wasn't terminal that day, but the next day he got the terminal diagnosis. Any event, she takes off her CFO hat and puts on her mama bear hat and hugs him and a friend hat. And their theory is he slaughters Maggie and Paul to buy time from her investigation. That is it. That is their theory. That is their theory. And it's totally fabricated. They've got no evidence of that. There's no evidence that Maggie was on to his financial misdeeds. There's no evidence that she was about to blow the whistle on him. There's no evidence that he had a $20 million life insurance policy on her, and that if he murdered her, that he could get out of financial bind. None of that. And I asked Ms. Secretary, how long of a delay did that buy Alec? What month, maybe? A month? That's their theory. That's what their case is built upon. And then this motions hearing is, there's a motions hearing scheduled for Thursday. It had previously been scheduled 2 other times. And it was continued at the last minute on the other occasions because 2 of the lawyers had cancer and we were receiving treatments. But it wasn't sure it was going to be continued previously. Did he go murder anybody, to get out from under those prior hearings? No, this had nothing to do with it. And, so they brought the plaintiff's lawyer in. He's an excellent lawyer, and he's, like any plaintiff's lawyer. I'm going to clean his clock. I'm going to take everything he's got. That's what they all say. So then we had to bring the defense lawyer in to say that was a negligent parenting case, and it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Folks, that's what we are in a murder case, and that's what we're having to deal with because that is their theory of motive. But even if the financial day of reckoning was impending, if it was right there, Alec would not have killed the people he loved the most in the world. There's no evidence that he would do that. We do have evidence of what he would do and did do. And if you'll pull up Defendant's Exhibit 125, which is in evidence. On September 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I forget the date. This is Labor Day weekend. He gets his drug dealer, Curtis Eddie Smith, to shoot him in the head until he couldn't go on because it was all going to come crashing down, and he had a big life insurance policy. So when Alex is at financial collapse, he doesn't go kill somebody else. He tries to end it himself. This is a natural response. You don't want anybody to do it, but people kill themselves from being exposed. Don't kill their wife they adore, son, the apple of his eye, as some people have said. That is, I don't have the adjective for that. That is so outlandish. I don't have a word for it. Totally illogical, irrational, and insane. Those are the words I wrote down. for someone to kill their loved ones when their criminal conduct is being exposed.
Girl, and well,
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
okay, but no reason to lie either. Why lie?
So yesterday we heard a lot from Mr. Waters, and I've been in Mr. Waters' position. As I explained, I was a federal prosecutor for a number of years. I've been a state prosecutor, part-time mostly, and I've done his job. It's a very rewarding job, and I hold him and I hold his office in very high esteem. But there just sometimes folks just get caught up in a case, they get a desire to win, they get so intoxicated by the attention that's brought on by the case that they start sort of a win at all cost approach. And I'm going to go through some things that Mr. Waters stated to you that just aren't facts and aren't supported by the facts and the evidence that you heard. And before I do that, I want to give you a cautionary statement. We lawyers aren't witnesses. I didn't take an oath to stand up here and talk to you. I have ethical obligations about what I can say and limitations under the rules, but I'm not a witness. I'm here to talk to you about the evidence. And the same applies to Mr. Waters. You decide what the evidence is. You decide. And
Further, we're going to take a short break for about 10 minutes. Please do not discuss the case.
Boy, stop. That argument is awful. Like, okay, you didn't take an oath to be standing in front of the audience. Yes, you did. You took an oath when you received that license from the bar. You took extensive course study in law school regarding ethics, integrity, being an officer of the court, all of these many different things. So let's go ahead and speed ahead, because even though they're on recess, we are behind. So we're going to speed ahead a little bit to when they get back into court to hear this wackadoodle, or just, the defense's version of the close. That was my opinion. Okay.
in fact, the state's ballistic expert
here we go.
testified.
I don't want to mess with it too much, but it should be starting in just a second.
Thank you. You may continue.
Yesterday in Mr. Waters' closing argument, he said that the evidence established that Paul and Maggie were murdered with family guns. And that perhaps is his view of the evidence, but that's not a fact. In fact, the state's ballistic expert testified that the 12-gauge shot shells that you found in the feed room were fired by the same shotgun. That the shot shells, the things that rolled under the door, were fired by the same gun. That's all he testified to as the shotgun. Now, they have put a lot of guns in evidence here that have nothing to do with the crime. So we don't know what shotgun was used. It could have been a shotgun bought at Walmart that afternoon. It could have been a 20-year-old shotgun. But all the evidence, ballistic evidence, is shot shells were fired by the same gun. And I don't know that you really need an expert for that, but that's what the testimony was on the shotgun. With regard to the 300 blackout, you'll recall that this guy, Paul Greer, testified that the cartridges found at the crime scene, and Maggie was shot with a 300 blackout, that the tool marks, it's called tool marks, that the extractor and ejector marks from the cartridges found at the crime scene matched extractor and ejector tool marks on some cartridges found at the house and some found at the shooting range. And what he didn't say was that where the firing pin breaches, that is one of the most reliable indications It did not match. No match. And he also did not compare projectiles. There was a projectile found. When I say projectile, that's the bullet. That's the bullet thing. It went into Maggie's body and broke up. But one went into the dog house and was found in the dog bed.
That was the bullet thing.
And
What?
what they did not do is take that projectile and dig
You know, that's the
projectiles out of
bullet
the
thing
barn
that
where
went
the
into her
shooting range
body
was,
and
compare it to see if the thing
that
matched.
it blew up.
And that's the most reliable way to do it. Now, in David Owen's notes, he said that the ballistic expert can't be 100% sure until you have the gun. And you heard my cross-examination of Agent Greer, and this tool mark ballistic examination is somewhat soft science. It's come under criticism. It's what they rely upon. Not every investigative lab relies upon it. That's what they did here, but it's not gospel. It's not gospel. Another thing about the 300 blackout, he in his closing, Mr. Waters repeatedly said that Alec bought it. Alec bought it. And I assume we're talking about the replacement. I don't know. Alec bought it. Well, Alec didn't buy it. The evidence in the record is Maggie bought it. And he kept saying it's the defendants. And it's not the defendants. The replacement 300 blackout, which frankly no one had seen Paul with it in quite some time except Will Loving on one occasion in sometime in March. It was Paul's gun. It wasn't Alec's gun. Paul's gun. At one point in time during his closing argument yesterday, Mr. Waters reenacted a shooting scenario, if you'll recall. And I'll do my best, but he stands up here and he says that Alec shoots Paul in the chest one time. And 999,999 times out of a million, that person is dead. He puts his shotgun down and he has a 300 blackout right here. He is so smart and so diabolical that he's going to stage it so it look like two shooters. So he's got a 300 blackout here, a shotgun that he just took his son out, but his son was 1 in a million, he says. 1 in a million comes this way. So Alec has to put the 300 blackout back down, pick up the shotgun, and shoot Paul. Where in the world does that scenario reside other than in Mr. Waters' mind? It doesn't. It doesn't. There's no evidence to support anything like that. None. And the fact that he has to go to such gymnastics to come up with Alex staging a two-shooter theory, I ought to tell you, there's 2 shooters out there. I ought to tell you, someone to do that. Another curious point in Mr. Waters' closing argument yesterday involves Paul's intuitive talents. You will recall that Alex informed agents that Paul was an intuitive little dude. Refer to him as a detective. That Miriam Proctor, Maggie's sister, said that Maggie referred to Paul as this little detective, her little detective. And particularly when it came to trying to root out whether Alex was still doing drugs. And then he just sort of left it there. Sort of left it there for you to then take it and run with it as if, oh, Paul must have found Alec using drugs. There must have been a confrontation down there at the kennel, and that must have been what happened. Now he didn't go that far in his argument, but he laid it out there for you to run with. But that was clearly the implication. And I want to tell you first, there are no facts to support that. None whatsoever. Let me add another scenario that's equally as plausible. What if Paul the detective learned the source of drugs that were being sold to his dad? What if Paul the detective goes to that drug source, says, cut it out. It's my dad. You're ruining my family. And if you don't, I'm going to tell on you, turn you in. And what if source is a member of dangerous drug gang?
No, that won't yet.
Well, the point is, there's no more evidence to support it, and there was no evidence. Those were just plausible scenarios that they were throwing out to you, and that you could think up many equally plausible scenarios. But you have to decide the evidence based on the facts that the state puts before you, not theories, not inferences, not speculation, but cold, hard facts. Mr. Waters also said that Alex, the master liar, accused Shelley, Smith, Blanca, and perhaps another witness of lying. He never did such a thing. He never accused anybody of lying from this witness stand. Now, I've been around long enough to know that witnesses can misremember things and believe them to be true. And frankly, I'm the biggest defender of that trait in my household. I convinced myself that I remembered something accurately, and I will have an argument with my wife until she shows me photographic evidence that I'm just wrong, and that's what it takes. I mean, that happens. People misremember things. But because we point out that
Misremember, or you will convince yourself.
Never did that.
What did you say?
The
And then your wife has to show you
one example is
proof?
Sister Marion.
Wow.
One example of misremembering. Sister Marion said that she spoke with Maggie
My
about 7
God.
p.m.
That's
while
called
she
a
was at Edisto.
gaslight in
And
my
Alec wanted to
book.
come to Moselle to visit her father. Well, we know that her recollection is mistaken because we have cell phone records, we got FBI records, we got her phone bill, we got that shows she was in Mount Pleasant and then she was traveling to Moselle around the period of time where Sister Marion thought she was at Edisto. Did not happen. That doesn't mean she was lying about that. Absolutely not. That's just how she remembered it. And she also said that when she talked to Maggie, that Maggie was going to go over and visit Mr. Randolph at Alameda. But we know from the records, Mr. Randolph had already been readmitted to the hospital. And that's in the records. And then Maggie knew it. We've got Maggie's text to Blanca, I think, in the day saying they're putting Mr. Randolph back in the hospital. We're scared for everybody and hope Alec doesn't go down to the hospital. Well, no reason I'm pointing it out. This is how Miriam remembered it. But if she remembered it incorrectly, and that happens because we point stuff out like that, we're not saying they're lying. Now, in the same with Shelley and the blue tarp, she remembers something. We're not sure what, but the evidence clearly is she says it was on Wednesday, June 16th, and we got FBI cell phone forensics. We've got records, and we got testimony that Alec is in Somerville. Spent the night with his in-laws, the Branstead on Tuesday, and he stayed there toward the end of the week, and then they went to the mountains at Kiowee. So Alec could not have been knocking on the door of the Alameda house on the morning of June 16th. And Barbara Mixon came in and told you that she relieves Shelley. Shelley works all night, leaves and goes to work at the school district. Barbara Ann comes in at 8 o'clock and relieves Shelley. And as Shelley recalled it, as the tarp was laid out when she left for work. Barbara Ann came in and said, I didn't see it. No time during that week that when I worked was there a blue tarp. I mean, Shelley remembers something, but she's not a blue raincoat, and it's certainly Alec could not have come over there on Wednesday. Now Shelley also says that he spoke to me about times, and I am, and that bothered me. I called my brother. We're not disputing that, but what she didn't say is Alec told me to say I was here in 45 minutes or things like that, and frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense because Alec kept saying, you get my phone records, and you'll know exactly what time I was when I was there. And I'll get to this a little bit more in a moment, but Mr. Waters keeps talking about compress the time so that it looks like he's been gone from Moselle longer than he was. Fair enough argument. I understand his point, but that point evaporates when you're talking about how long you are at Alameda. It doesn't matter if he's there 45 minutes or 20 minutes. It doesn't really matter how long he was there. Now, I guess before you had the OnStar data, they could be saying, oh, he said he was there 45 minutes, but he was only there 22 minutes, and he spent the other 10, 15 minutes traipsing through the woods, burying bloody clothes and getting rid of murder weapons. Well, we may have heard that in this trial had we not gotten the OnStar data from General Motors in the middle of the trial, which shows conclusively he drove over there and he drove straight back. Another small point. He said there's biological material on the Polaris. I don't think that was ever tested. It certainly looks like it. But what we've learned in this case is things aren't always as they seem. They thought they had blood on the shirt. Turns out there's no blood on the shirt. And that this biological material showed that Maggie was running toward her baby. Now, I don't know that there's any evidence which way Maggie was running or what she was running to. There's not. I mean, it's a fair inference. And everyone who knows Maggie would know that's what she would do. And we're not disputing that would be her mother instinct. And did that probably happen? It probably did, but it's just to state it as a fact. There's no evidence of that. Now, one thing he also said, the cell phone backlight turning on. And and I don't have an Apple phone, but so here's the issue, and mine won't do it because I don't have an Apple phone, I don't think. But if you take a phone flat and pick it up, light comes on, and why is that important? Why is that important? Like I say, I'll probably turn this phone off, and if I'm making a point that you all know the answer to, I apologize, but it's important that you do know the answer. Why this is important? It's important because now that we have the OnStar data, we know Alec drove his Suburban by the spot where Maggie's phone was found at 9:08. Now, there's probably some seconds in there, but 9:08. And we know that her phone is in the woods at that point. So the question is, did Alec throw it out the window at 9:08? And the answer is, no, he didn't. Because if you throw it out the window, at a minimum, the display light's going to come on. At a minimum. And when that display light comes on, it registers. These phones say a lot. I was lesson learned in this case. It registers in this knowledge C database, and it says display light on, and it has a time that the display light came on. Well, there's no, on Maggie's phone, the display light does not come on at 9:08. Okay, so means Alec didn't throw the phone out. And yesterday, Mr. Water says every single expert testified that the backlight comes on and sometimes it doesn't when the phone is raised aggressively. That's not true. Only one person testified to that. And Mr. Murdaugh, who over the weekend, he works for Charleston County Sheriff's Department. I don't know why they didn't get SLED agent to do it, but he got a phone similar to one that Maggie had, not Maggie's phone, had software, well, not the same version as Maggie, and he spent all weekend throwing the phone on the ground, see what would happen. Or many hours of the day throwing the phone on the ground. And he comes in here and says, hey folks, sometimes the light comes on, sometimes it doesn't. Well, our expert, Nika Sturgis, says it comes on. It comes on. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. But folks, we wouldn't even be having this discussion if they had secured Maggie's phone and not put it in a Faraday bag so that the GPS coordinates on the 7th would not have been overwritten. And they were. So now we got a guy down in Charleston throwing a phone around all weekend. Because they are desperate to prove Alec threw the phone out when he went by the and they got no evidence of that. In fact, the evidence is the contrary. He did not. And the evidence supports everything that he had said from the day he had that interview or a couple of days. You get the OnStar data, you get GPS data, you get my GPS data, and you'll know I'm not traveling with her phone. Never got it. Wrote over it, and now we've got a guy tossing the phone in an office. Doesn't even work for SLED. Not every expert says that. The guys even said that's not his area of expertise. So let's see if I've hit it all. Oh yeah, the last one's about me. Mr. Waters says that I did an HBO interview in November 2022, and he references some things I said in the HBO interview. Well, I didn't, and he knows I didn't. It was testified about. There's an HBO special. I am on it. I'm not telling anybody to watch it, but that was filmed back in, I don't know, spring, summer of 2022. I'm well before he was charged with murder. And I'm not on TV talking about his murder charges, but he wants you to think that, and I don't know why. And I took a little bit of offense to that. I really did.
And we object because he was.
I was not being interviewed.
Objection's overruled.
Not being interviewed in November 2022. Not. So I've asked why. They can't answer that. They don't have an answer as to why. Now how? How could Alec, in the time period we know we're going to get to it, but how could he have butchered Maggie and Paul without leaving a trace of evidence within a matter of minutes? How? We went from why, now how. And the answer to the how is he couldn't. But this is the wrong question to be asking yourself. Because the question that you are tasked with answering is, has the state presented evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt showing that Alec butchered Maggie and Paul without leaving a trace of evidence, all within a matter of minutes? In a matter of minutes. Have they proven evidence? Do they present evidence of that? Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He was able to make bloody clothes, bloody guns, who knows how much, whatever, disappear in a matter of minutes without leaving a trace. without leaving a trace. Of course they haven't. A reasonable doubt is doubt that causes a reasonable person to hesitate on the most important decisions of your life. And here, there's no direct evidence of Alec doing anything other than he's at the kennel, 8:44, and this is just pleasant family talking about Bubba the dog getting a chicken. So the state's trying to weave this story of his guilt based upon circumstantial evidence. And the judge will charge you on circumstantial evidence, and I have no dispute with what the state put up here yesterday, because that's the law, and you're going to get it. He's going to give you the written document with the charge. And you will see in there that when they rely upon circumstantial evidence, it's as good as direct evidence, but there's some things that it has to do to be as good as direct evidence. And what it has to do, the circumstantial evidence, is that the circumstances must be consistent with each other, and when taken together, point conclusively to the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. If these circumstances portray the behavior of a defendant as suspicious, the proof has failed. That's circumstantial evidence. So what are the circumstances that the state relies upon? Well, he was at the kennel at 8:44. Paul last used his phone at 8:48. He replied to a text with a friend about a movie recommendation. Maggie's phone locked for the last time at 8:50. Actually, 8:49 and 50 some odd seconds, but 8:50. But however, her phone recorded significant steps around 8:55, and we're going to see that. And her phone tried to activate the camera at 8:55, and it registered an orientation change at 9:06. And I think pretty much understand orientation change, but when the phone goes from landscape to portrait, or this is beats me, but goes from that to that is an orientation change, and the phone will tell you. So it did that at 9:06. And they've got 300 shell casings, extractor and ejector markings matched with casings found around the house shooting range. So that's pretty much it. And then of the circumstantial evidence of his guilt. Now they want to say, well, he lied about it, so it's consciousness of guilt. But I'm talking about what evidence they have, put all the circumstances together, prove he shot and killed Maggie Paul, and that's pretty much it. And how have they established the time of death here? Solely on cell phone use. And using the phone or not using the phone doesn't dictate or define whether you're dead or alive. I mean, I'd say most everybody in this courtroom does not have their phone with them right now. Under the state's theory, as I mentioned before, if they die while they're not using their phone, then they're dead the moment they stop using their phone. That's what they have here. That is their case. There are a number of reasons that Paul would stop using his phone. First, so I got two testimonial clips, one from Rogan. Remember Rogan Gibson? If you'll play that quickly, Doug. This is Rogan testifying about Paul's phone.
You were asking a little bit about Paul's cell phone usage. He was on it a lot.
He was on it a lot, yes, sir.
Yeah, and did the battery get down?
Okay. All right. What is the objection?
Not showing the witness, they're showing the defendant while the witness is testifying. I think the testimony
What's
was.
the legal basis for the objection? All right. Mr. Griffin.
It's a clip from the live feed of this trial, Your Honor. I can't control who is being depicted, but it's my voice asking Rogan.
How many weeks?
6 weeks.
So we're not going to replay the trial.
That's a clip of a few seconds.
I sustain the objection.
All right, take it down, Doug. So you will remember that Rogan said that when Paul's phone, and by the way, if you don't remember and you have questions about it when you're in jury deliberations, you can always ask to have testimony replayed for you through. Can we play the audio without the video?
You're asking me,
Yes,
what
sir.
can you do? I rule on objections.
Can you play the audio then, please?
You were asking a little bit about Paul's cell phone usage. He was on it a lot.
He was on it a lot, yes, sir.
Yeah, and did the battery get down low pretty regularly?
Yes, he would let his phone die sometime or he would lose it.
Well, and when it would get down low, did he have a habit of not using it to try to keep him going all the way out?
Yes, I have seen that happen before.
And have you done that yourself?
Yes, sir.
Right, and so you'll know from the photographs and the evidence in the case that Paul's phone was at 2%, and it was on low power mode at the time. He was texting this friend of his about a movie recommendation. And then can you play the audio only of, you remember Nate Tootin, and he testified about Paul putting the phone down when he was working around the kennels.
And how would you describe the relationship between Paul and Alex?
They had a really good relationship.
Would you say that Alex?
I don't think that's right, Clue. The so there, Mr. Tootin testified that when Paul would work, he would put the phone down, forget where it was at times, and that it was pretty common for him to put the phone down at the kennel so he wouldn't get it wet. And you recall Dale Davis, they brought him to the stand. I think they brought him to the stand to make it seem like the hose was unraveled and then it was used and put back. And we know from the video, and you can see it again, the dog kennel video, we pointed out the hose is on the ground outside Cash's kennels. And Mr. Davis says, yeah, that was not how I left it. Someone had put it down. And then I'm going to show you. Oh, shoot. Got it right here. Doug, can I have the Elmo, please?
Y'all, sir is shook. Alex is shook. And Jim is shook. Real quick, guys, and we'll go into this in a little bit. I don't know how much longer this is going to go, but I am just seeing an update, and I'm not sure if you've seen this already, but it appears that Tim Norman has been sentenced to life in prison. Tim Norman, as you know, who is the son of Miss Robbie, who was an Ikette. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll get some more details, but I just got an alert. So thank you for everyone who's here. I appreciate you coming and watching with us.
Dog beds are up here on top. And you recall Dale Davis says that when you clean out the kennels, hose it down, you put the dog beds on top. So it's pretty clear from these photos, this photo.
Alex looks like he's about to have a damn hissy fit.
Paul and or Maggie had sprayed out those dog runs and put the dog beds on top, and put the hose away. Alex testified that the Bubba and Grady had on collars, and we see the collars in States 45, and so the collars hanging here, but they're collars hanging here. And then there's collars here, and the dogs don't have collars on them in the dog picture. So it's a fair conclusion that after Alec left, when he said he left, that Paul puts Bubba up, Paul puts Grady up after cleaning out the kennels, and then he goes back into the feed room to get his phone where he was confronted. Or sometime later it happened. I don't know. But they are relying upon cell phone usage for time of death. The coroner said he did the armpit test, which is no test at all. It's just a guesstimate.
Sir is fucking up like bad.
Pull up in evidence. Now I want to talk about Maggie's phone. And
Girl.
Defendant's Exhibit 158.
It's the old make something out of nothing defense, or Judge is so cool as a cucumber. He's just sitting there like, you want me to tell you what you can do? Like, sir, this is not beginner court. This is not mock trial.
You'll see 849-26. Last text message read by Maggie. Okay, go to the next one. 849-28, backlight off. Go to the next one. 849-31, phone locks, remains locked until recovered by law enforcement. It was locked for the last time and never unlocked. 853, but on 853, the backlight comes on. It's being manipulated.
But
850.
I'm just going to stop for a second. See, this guy, he's done. I'm sorry. Jim may not be the sharpest. I don't know. Harpootli and Dick might have needed to do this close because you're basically highlighting. Yeah. Alex was there. Alex was there at that time. He was there. So you are highlighting the text messages of when Maggie could no longer answer when Alex was there. Like, I don't, what? Alex looked like he's about to have a fit because he knows that I think Jim is messing up at this moment.
312, orientation to portrait starts. 8:53:15, phone begins logging 59 steps. 8:53:20, there's a Siri usage, and the testimony is you can get that by squeezing the button.
Look, I'm also going to say this too. You've got someone who is giving testimony or giving an argument about iPhones that he knows nothing about. He should have gone to an iPhone store and spent 45 minutes with somebody who could give him a crash course on how to operate this phone so he could understand what he's reading. Also, on top of that, maybe get someone who appears to be an expert. I don't know if they would need to go get someone from the iPhone store, someone who works for Apple who can testify about their product, right? That's number two. Also, the fact that these are some older gentlemen in their 50s and 60s who aren't aware of the product, they're not familiar with the phone, and don't seem to be super duper techie. It's not so much age has anything to do with it because you guys know I'm 52 and I'm an iPhone aficionado. But at the end of the day, they're referencing things they don't know anything about, and also, I don't know. I think they could have done a little bit better job of trying to understand what this is saying. But on top of the fact that OnStar, all of the data, the telemetry data has him there, a Snapchat video that was taken by his son that shows that he lied about being there versus not being there, also identified the clothing he had on versus what he had on when he engaged with the police after the murders happened. I mean, sir, this is not just a coincidence, and this is not Sled's fault.
8:53:24, the orientation portrait completes. So it switches. And then 8:53:28, backlight is off. Next, backlight is on. Backlight is off again. And it's on again. Keep going. And then 8:54:34, camera use starts. It's activated by touching the camera icon or by swiping left in the lock screen. There was a question as to whether that could be from facial recognition. And Lieutenant Dove said that information resides in the Knowledge C database, but he did not look for it. Micah Sturgis, our expert, looked for it, found it, and came and told you that was not a facial recognition miss. It was from intentionally activating the phone only for 1 second. Go to the next slide. Camera usage ends. Go to the next slide. Orientation landscape starts. 8:54:44, it ends. And then 8:55. So the point, there's a lot going on with Maggie's phone at around 8:55. Keep going. Keep going. And then at 9:03, the backlight goes off. And at 9:04, there's a missed call from Alex. And at 9:04:23, the backlight's off. And 9:04:41, the missed call from Alex ends. So let's back up too. Let's go to 9:04:23, missed call from Alex. Okay. And this was the testimony on 9:04:23, and it's important. Alex calls Maggie. And when that happens, you would, her backlight was on. Go back one more. Her backlight is on at 9:03:52. At 9:04, missed call from Alex starts. At 9:04:23, and instantaneously, the backlight goes off. Now, you heard the testimony of that means when that call came in, someone pushed on the side to stop the call. Now was that done by Maggie because she was over on the other side of the workshop where we see those footprints that we heard about that were never really analyzed? and that she didn't want any noise coming through? Or was that some bad guy or bad person has Maggie's phone and stops the call? But something's going on with her phone at 9:04. I'll tell you that. And then at 9:04, the next one is missed call from Alex ends. 9:05, backlight on. 9:06, orientation changes to portrait. 9:07, incoming call from Alex. Excuse me, 9:06, 14. Keep going, Doug. And 9:06, 52. Keep going. And then at 9:07, her phone stops for good.
I mean, my thing is this, Alex, it's like why were you calling so many times? Like, if you thought something was strange because she didn't answer the phone, why didn't you go see? But you did go see because you were actually down there. We don't know that you were down there because you thought something was up. You were down there because you were up to no good. At the end of the day, it's like all these calls were to establish that he was calling, that he cared, that he was a husband, that he was checking in. But at the end of the day, I think these were just calls to establish some sort of footprint, because he was going to try and look like the concerned husband. And I thought something was strange. I was calling her, but she didn't pick up the phone. And his story was that he didn't even go check on her. But you didn't need to go check on her because you were already there, right? Girl, he seems confused
one of the things
AF.
that
I
you've
think
heard
he didn't
this
have a
case
breakfast. I don't know.
That orientation change was at 9:06 that we just talked about. And Doug, if you'll go to the
Look, I'm just going to say it like this.
you
And I
go
know
to
some of you
defendants
might not like
156,
this, but
please.
God don't like ugly. And at the end of the day, Alex, you are going to have to be held
And so
held
these
to
are
account.
Alex
And all of
steps
this
on his phone that were
trickery
registered
and
during this
foolishness
time
that you've
period.
been up to,
And if you'll go to
it
entry,
doesn't matter how
if you look at
expensive
entry
your lawyers
28,
are.
if
If
you'll pull that
the
out,
truth
Doug.
is going to come out. So at the end of the day, we're going to see that hopefully justice is served for the
So
people who
28,
lost their lives.
this is between 9:02:18 and 9:06:47. And this is the time period that Mr. Waters in his argument said was scurrying around because he took, can you just bring it back a little bit more, please? So can we do it so we can see the whole line? Just, that's fine. So that, so here we see line 28 between 9:02 and 9:06. There's 283 steps and it went 208 meters. So I want you to first, and so they take the position that this is him scurrying around. But if you do the math, which we haven't done here on this document, but 283 steps in 269 minutes, excuse me, 269 seconds, turns out to be 1.05 steps per second, 0.05. 1.05 steps per second. Multiply that by 60, you get 63 steps per second. And if, ladies and gentlemen, this is a slow walk, 1 step per second. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. This is Alex scurrying around according to the state's case. And if you look at the distance in meters, the last, when he gets, I guess, to the house at 7:55 to 8:55, he goes 203 meters before it stops registering. And then one thing you will remember during this time period, between 9:02 and 9:06, at 9:06, Maggie's phone has an orientation change. Her phone has moved from here to here. But what her phone doesn't have is, go to the second page. What her phone doesn't have are steps. Are steps. And Lieutenant Dove testified that, yeah, it doesn't look like anyone, but that her phone is moving at 9:06, but there's no steps being registered. Alec is walking from 9:02 to 9:06. So fair to reason that Alec is not walking with Maggie's phone.
Shoot, he
That's the
might have been driving
timeline data
Maggie's
that I
phone.
wanted to review with you. The, if you'll go to Exhibit 524, Defense Exhibit 524, please. I think it's, yeah, States 524. I'm sorry. Do you have that? So if you'll go to the slide where, no, sir, not 38. Do you have the whole document or you don't? Okay, we'll drop that. Okay. Well, I mentioned earlier, and so States Exhibit 524 is all the OnStar data. You will see there that he goes by the spot at 908 where Maggie's phone was found. And there was testimony that he sped up after he went by there. He sped up to like from 42 to 45 and went back down to 44 miles an hour when he went by there. He's not speeding up when he goes by the area where Maggie's phone was found, whenever it was tossed. And then they have, a chart or slide that talks about how long it took him to get over there and the speeds that it took. And Mr. Waters was arguing to you that compressed the timeline. The faster he gets over to Alameda, it means that he's gone longer from Moselle, and it gives him a better alibi because, as you know, he's orchestrating this alibi. And so he's driving fast over to Alameda according to their theory. And we graphed it out, and he's passing some cars, and he is, he's a fast driver. Okay, so they say, oh, he's compressing the timeline. Compressing the timeline is what they say. Compressing the timeline. But then they say he drives fast on the way back. Why? He's driving the same speed over there, same speed back. There's no reason to compress the timeline coming back. I mean, you'd want to be driving slow as you can, make it appear you've been gone a lot longer. I mean, he drives the same speed from Moselle to Alameda as from Alameda back to Moselle. It takes him the same amount of time. He's not compressing any timeline at all. And what's the most curious part about Maggie's phone? What's most curious about it is Alec has her password. Alec, if he is wanting to change the timeline, when he calls her phone, he should answer her phone. When he texts her, he should reply to that text to show activity on her phone that she's still alive. If he is manufacturing a timeline by speeding, the easiest way to do it is use both phones, talk on both phones, and he did it. This whole thing about using Maggie's phone, driving Maggie's phone, throwing Maggie's phone out it's such a stretch for them to come in and try to put her phone in his hand. And then you start thinking through, why would Alec take her phone and not Paul's phone? Let's start there. Why would Alec take her phone and not Paul's phone? That's a question I don't have an answer to. It makes no sense. It makes no sense why he would take Maggie's phone. If there's something on there, he knows her password. Put it in, see what it is. We know from all this phone data, her phone was never unlocked. And he had the keys. So if he's taking her phone to unlock or to do something with it, he didn't. And so why? And these are circumstances that have to be consistent with each other and have to point conclusively to the guilt of Alec Murdaugh, beyond a reasonable doubt. And these circumstances just raise more questions, ladies and gentlemen, raise more questions that we wouldn't have to be dealing with if they had just simply secured Maggie's phone in a Faraday bag on June the 8th when they got it. We wouldn't be here. So we do know from the timeline that Alec left the property at 9:07. Were they killed before he left? I don't know the answer to that. But we do know that if he was in the house when the shots were made down at the kennel, that he would not have heard them. We had decibel testing from Mr. Sutton. Now they were angry with Mr. Sutton's angle test. They were not angry, but they challenged his conclusions on a lot of things. But they didn't touch his acoustic testing. Didn't doubt that. Haven't challenged that. And so if he's in the house and the shots are going down ringing down at the kennel. He doesn't hear it. He doesn't hear it. Now, they say that sometime after 8:44, and they peg it 8:48, 8:50, because that's when Paul last responded to a text from this friend of his, but they ignore the fact that it had to be cleaned up. And I think Buster testified that takes 10 minutes at least to get the dogs in, clean up, and et cetera. And then there's all this 8:55 stuff going on Maggie's phone. But let's take him at their theory at 8:50, after having a pleasant conversation talking about, is it a guinea or is it a chicken, and Bubba, all right, so 4 minutes later, let's go ahead and kill my wife and my son because I got questioned at the office today by Jeannie's secretary. Okay, that's their case. So let's run with it and see where it takes us. Well, it takes us that he leaves the property at 9:07. So from the moment, if he's got, if it happens at 8:50, he's got 17 minutes. 17 minutes. He would have to be a magician to make all that evidence disappear. As you heard, under either Dr. Kinsey or Mr. Palmbach, Dr. Reamer and Dr. Kinsey, Mr. Palmbach, and Dr. Eisenstadt, either way, the shooter's covered with blood on Paul's shooter. And that's what all that testimony was about. It wasn't about trying to figure out who's got the right angles. The whole point of that is, while we ended up having to get our own experts, is to prove the shooter is covered in biological material, covered in blood, covered in everything, because the blowback. And it wasn't until on reply that Dr. Kinsey said, oh, well, there'd be blowback under my version too. Blowback meaning blood, biological material from killing Paul. So the shooter's covered in blood. The shooter's gun is covered in blood. And that there's not sufficient amount of time to clean all that up, make all that disappear, and then call your son Buster, driving to visit your mother, who you got a call from Barbara Mixon earlier today, said your mother's agitated because your dad went back in the hospital and you might want to check on her. He goes to check on her. He calls Buster. And does he say, hey, Bus, I just blew your mom and brother up. You should see the damn mess. Are you kidding me? He calls Chris Wilson. Normal conversation. He calls his brother John Marvin, talking about his dad. And then he goes over there and he sits down with Shelly and sits on his mom's dad. And he stays there 20 minutes, not 40 minutes or 22 minutes. I don't know. The records show what time. But the fact of the matter is, he's got no blood on him. He's acting normal as every day. He is the same old Alec. Yet their theory is he just blew the people he loved the most in this world, blew him away. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the angles that Mr. Sutton did, his reverse trajectories on the shots, and I mean, they're having a good time joking about the size of the figure in the Pharaoh, saying, "Oh, it must have been a 12-year-old kid. It's 5'2", 5'4", and let them have their fun." But that's not what the testimony was. The testimony was that the barrel of the gun has to be at that level to make the shot into the quail pen. We didn't take the measurements. SLED took the measurements. And so, yeah, could a 6'4" person get down to that level? Sure. And Mr. Sutton says that's not a natural shooting angle. Could a 6'4" person get on their knees? Sure. Shooters are in movement, and a 6'4" person is going to be moving around on their knees? I don't think so. But, the most common sense thing here is there were two shooters. Because there were two guns. And as Mr. Palmbach said, one gun is high capacity, holds 10, 20, 30 rounds. And if you're going down to execute somebody, one gun's enough. I'll take another gun that only has 3 shots. And Dr. Kinsey agreed with the angle coming out of the quail pen, so that the angle puts it pretty far away from the door of the feed room where Paul's killed. But it's not our burden. It's not our burden. It's their burden to prove to you, based on circumstantial evidence, that all the circumstances are consistent with each other and point conclusively to the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And those facts are just not consistent. Those facts are just not consistent. I won't say a word about condition of Paul and Maggie, particularly Paul. I'm not going to show you any photos. But I think you would agree that it was so bad. It was so bad. And Alec, in the back of the car, with me in the back of that, you can see me on the camera, sitting there and talking to Agent Owen and Agent Crawl.
Alex
says
is sitting there thinking, I want my fucking money back. You're going to owe me big. And when you have to fight this on appeal, I'm not paying you a dime. This was horrible.
Says they did him so bad. And Agent Owen was in the car, and he doesn't say to you, oh, he actually said, I did him so bad. I think we can put that issue to rest, but that issue points to a bigger question. What would they be saying in this trial if that conversation wasn't videotaped? What would they be saying? We know Agent Croft would be saying, he said, I did him so bad. And then where would we be then? I am grateful to SLED that they videotaped that, so that you'll hear it if you have any questions. I don't think you should, but they did him so bad. That is for sure. Another thing that we're going to clear up right now is Alec's concern for Buster. You heard that, and you heard that in Mr. Waters' closing. That in the statements that Alec made on the roadside shooting in Labor Day weekend, where he tried to arrange assisted suicide, that he told officers that there's no danger to Buster. Of course, there was no danger to Buster because of that roadside shooting, because he knew who shot him, Curtis A.D. Smith. He knew he was trying to get himself killed. But from that, they're going, the reason he knows there's nothing to worry about Buster is because he knows he did it. That's what was just argued yesterday. Well, Deputy McDowell, in a body cam video that's in evidence, captured Alec speaking to Buddy Hill about his concern about Buster's safety. Will you play that now, Doug? It's in evidence. I don't have the exhibit number. Again? Because I think the
Randy, what about Buster? You gotta get, Bud, can y'all get a police officer for my oldest son in Columbia? Can you call Buster? No, I haven't told him yet.
Did you hear that? Can y'all get a police officer for my oldest son in Columbia? What about Buster? What about Buster? Can y'all get a police officer for my oldest son? Buddy, can y'all get a police officer for my oldest son in Columbia? That's Buddy Hill, sheriff. And they want to come in here and tell you he wasn't concerned for Buster's safety?
It's the entitlement for me that you think that you can ask a police chief to go run someone down to your son who is, I don't know, miles away and isn't calling 911 in distress, that you need to pull law enforcement away from the community to go fetch your son when you are constantly in the middle of some BS around town. Really? You're still not even asking about a killer or apprehending the people who would have done such an atrocity on your property to your wife and the son who's laying there dead. You're trying to get the police chief distracted to go run someone down there and go pick up the one who appears to be safe. Let him say, why would you bring him to danger and tragedy rather than leave him where he's at and he can come later? Like, you're stupid. Like, he's so busy trying to run everything. That's why he's sitting in court right now. Hey, everyone. Hey, Gig. Hey, Tam. Life with Jay. Cinnamon. Hello, Niche. How are you doing? How's everybody doing today? Thank you for joining. We're a little bit behind in the closing, but Jim Griffin is doing a very horrible job, in my opinion. It would have been nice to see him come with it with a very well planned, thought out closing to tie this up in a nice little package for Alex to try to make it make sense for the jury of why he is being falsely accused. But it's awful. It's awful.
Once again, I'm grateful Colleton County Sheriff's Department had body cams. Now you know Alec was concerned. You know Alec asked for a police officer for his son in Columbia, Buster. Now I'm almost done, I promise. But I do want to talk about Alec's misstatements about time. Alex told Deputy Owen during interviews that, well, first, Alec's statements about time are not lies. They were just misstatements. And even, like I said, Deputy Owen says people make mistakes about all the, Agent Owen, they make mistakes about time all the time. And they do. Now, Mr. Waters is critical because Alec was wrong every time he gave a time estimate. Turns out, I think Mr. Waters is probably right about that. Whether the time period is inconsequential or consequential, he's wrong about it. And the and we had brought in, Alec had told deputies in an interview that he got home at 5 o'clock, and that's not true. That he went to work that day at 8:30, that's not true. And that and so he is just wrong on times. But what was consistent whenever he had an interview, he said, "You get the records, and it will show what time I did this, what time I did that. It will all be in the records." And guess what? They are in the records. And when the records show that his time estimate was wrong, they jump up and down. The statement to Deputy Green, he says, I've gone to my mom's for about an hour and a half, and I last saw them 45 minutes. Now that I don't know. Frankly, don't know if that's wrong or not. He's talking to Deputy Green about 10:30. Hour and a half from 10:30 is 9 o'clock. He left. He left at 9. He left at 9:07. But that's that. The question about what he did when he got down to the scene, and he said he ran up to Paul and Maggie, and he left his phone, and he went back to get his phone, and then he's talking to the 911 operator, and you can hear it, and he says, "I've been up to it now. It's bad." He doesn't remember the sequencing, and I don't think anyone should hold that against him. Mr. Waters gets up here and says Maggie was running to her baby. Alec was running to his baby. And can you imagine what he saw? And is it evidence of guilt that he doesn't remember what the sequencing was in that moment? Is that evidence? Is that evidence of guilt? Or is that evidence of trauma? This is a guy that then went to get a 12-gauge shotgun, and he put 16-gauge shells in it. He knows the difference, but he didn't know that night. And I'm not quite understanding what the state makes of this. Did he not go up to their bodies? Because the forensic evidence sure speaks to the contrary. What we have is Maggie's DNA all over his T-shirt. And you heard that from Agent Zapata. We have Paul's DNA on his T-shirt. How did he get Paul and Maggie's DNA on his T-shirt if he didn't touch them? If he brutally murdered them, hosed off down there next to their dead bodies, got in the golf cart butt naked, drove to the house, changed clothes, went over to his mom's, goes down, calls 911, then searches for Whaley restaurant menu and checking emails, waiting for the police to show up. How does he get their DNA on his body? Because it's on there. Their forensic lab tells you that. Because he went up to them and touched them. And then there's a spot of blood on the Suburban steering wheel that was Maggie's. And we know that Suburban was never down at the kennel, thanks to the OnStar information. I'm not sure that was an accepted fact until OnStar sent their stuff in, but the Suburban never went down to the kennel until after he returned back from Moselle. So we know the blood got on the steering wheel after he checked Maggie like he said he did on the 911 call. And then there's a spot of blood on the gun that he went to get. And then there's GSR. There's GSR. There's 3 particles of GSR on his shirt, 3 particles of GSR on his shorts, and 1 on his finger. And the SLED agent testified that's consistent with transferred GSR when you pick up a gun. So, but really, we're back to the lie. We are back to the lie. Because that's all they have in this case is that Alec lied to them when he last saw them, and he shouldn't have. And he shouldn't have. And he said, "What a tangled web we weave once we start to deceive." And once he lied the first time, he was stuck with the lie, and he continued to lie. And he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have. And he told you, what was going through his mind. Probably wasn't rational, but he was in the throes of an addiction, and he just found his wife and son murdered. And he's being interviewed. He'd been swiped for GSR, and he does think David Owen is the guy that investigated his friend. But he was wrong. He told you. Turns out he was wrong. But I thought that's who it was that night. And he was under investigation. He was being accused of obstructing the boating accident investigation. And he's under investigation by SLED for that. And he had all these skeletons in his closet. And he was wanting to get them away from him and looking for the real killer. The state in this case has gone to lengths trying to, through a sleight of hand, convince you of this and show you that, and without convince you of guilt, without showing evidence of guilt. Convince you that he murdered his wife and son because of his financial misdeeds were going to come out, which is about the most illogical thing imaginable, and there's no evidence of that. And then the state brings all these shotguns in here, and I'm not going to pick every one of them up, but the forensic evidence on these shotguns is they can't be excluded. Well, okay. They can't be included either, so you know nothing more about these shotguns than you would have the day you showed up for jury selection, because there's nothing to know about them. Can't exclude them. Can't include them according to them. But we do know there's no blood, guts, brains on any of the guns that would have been there from the shooting under everybody's interpretation of how Paul was murdered. They want you to think that because you own guns, that you should be viewed differently. I don't know what else to make of that. When this trial began with opening statements on January 25th, Mr. Harpootlian asked why. Why would Alex execute his wife and son in cold blood? And here we are, 6 weeks later. And you've heard weeks testimony about Alex's financial crimes, drug addiction, and lies. But after all that, the state has failed to provide a satisfactory answer to this question. Why? The state cannot provide an answer to this question because the answer is he would not, under any circumstances, murder those that meant the most to him. Your oath requires that you hold the state to the exacting standard of proof that the state must prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And when they rely solely on circumstantial evidence, these circumstances must be consistent with each other. And when taken together, point conclusively to the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they merely portray the behavior of the defendant as suspicious, you must find him not guilty. The state's evidence fails to meet these requirements. Circumstances don't point conclusively to Alex's guilt. Far from it. Mr. Waters wants you to believe that Alex slaughtered Maggie and Paul on June 7th and repeatedly lied and changed the story to fit the timeline and evidence. As it turns out, in fact, the state is the one that's been manipulating evidence to fit their theories of guilt, which changed over time from the date of these murders until yesterday. In the absence of forensic science, a reliable investigation, the guns, blood spatter, the time and opportunity to have committed these murders, you're instead left to make inferences about all sorts of interactions and behaviors. Prosecution wants you to view the evidence through the diabolical monster lens that they have tried to paint, but the law requires you to view it through the lens of innocence, where none of these things, individually or taken together, prove conclusively to Alex's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Up until now, you've not been able to say a single word Can't imagine how frustrating that must be. But soon you will have the most powerful voice in this courtroom. With your words, you can let everyone know that in a court of law, only evidence and the burden of proof matters, not gossip, innuendo, opinions, and most of all, not theories layered on top of speculation. With your words, you can let the state know that they don't get to obtain an indictment by misleading a grand jury and then bring you before you a case built on theories, speculation. There are two words that justice demands in this case, and those two words are not guilty. The oath you've taken in this case is to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, and to hold the government to the burden of proof. And it requires a verdict of not guilty. On behalf of Alex, on behalf of Buster, on behalf of Maggie, and on behalf of my friend Paul, I respectfully request that you do not compound a family tragedy with another. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll send you to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case.
Okay, that was horrible. But because we have time, let's see, let's advance because they are, I guess they're waiting for the jury to come out. I guess we'll see what they're going to talk about in just a second. So just hold back and then we'll advance through the break to hear, I guess they have the, I forget they call it, maybe it's like redress or something. And the state will get to come back and kind of, and then we're getting closer to time. So, okay, let's hear what they have to say, and then I'll fast forward through the break.
You might go.
No more than 40 minutes.
Yes, I did.
You ready to go?
If you give me, I just need to go to the bathroom.
Sure. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
During his question.
Okay, guys, I'm going to advance this. Hold on. So I think right now they've both gotten a chance to close, and I think the state gets to come back with any final items. I don't know if the defense does too, but it's kind of like a mini round two. So let's see how this goes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the state gets an opportunity to do a rebuttal. Mr. Metters.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Attorney General Alan Wilson, Deputy Don Lincoln, Deputy Attorney General Craig Mortars, and this entire team, and I want to name them all, but thank you for the attention you've given this case. Being a juror is not an easy job. I'm not a jury watcher. I don't sit and stare at jurors, but goodness knows we've been here 6 weeks. I have looked over occasionally, not to pry, but I've noticed when I have looked, you've all paid attention. So thank you. 6 weeks. Thank you. And I'm not going to be that long. Your clerk, Ms. Hill, has done an outstanding job bringing the world to Colleton County, bringing the world right here with the hospitality of her grace, making everything as convenient as she can. But the one thing she didn't do and couldn't do is give you a booklet on how to be a juror. 5.5 weeks ago when y'all got here, 6 weeks ago, she didn't have that pamphlet for you because they don't exist. There's not a book on how to be a juror, but you have been preparing for this moment in this courtroom to decide this case your entire life. And it's called life. It's called living. It's called experiences. It's called interacting with your spouse, your children, your neighbors, your coworkers, your good experiences, your bad experiences, evaluating people and deciding what's credible, what's believable. It's true in every case I've ever tried in my 34 years of doing nothing but murder cases. Credibility, believability. And I agree with Mr. Griffin. When I looked at this case the first time, I said to myself, this is a CSE case. Now, in our world, that means criminal sexual conduct. It's not a criminal sexual conduct case. This is a common sense case. And you didn't leave that common sense with you when you came here 6 weeks ago. It's with you now. It's been with you during the 6 weeks here, and you're going to take it back into the jury room. I've been listening yesterday and today, and we all have, about law enforcement didn't do this, law enforcement didn't do that. I think they actually said they fabricated evidence, putting law enforcement on trial. I once called Mr. Arputney in a trial an automatic smoke screen machine. I think what the defense is doing in this case is more like an eclipse. You remember that eclipse on August 17th of 2017, where it kind of got dark for a little bit? And the birds started chirping, and you felt like it was dark. And then it cleared, the eclipse went over, and the light came back. That's what the defense is doing, taking you away from the facts, from the credibility, and saying, wait a minute, there's an eclipse here, there's a smoke screen here. Look at that. And somebody said the word offensive. I find it offensive that a family with a great-grandfather, a grandfather, a father, Sylvester Randolph Murdaugh, who was good to me when I was a young man prosecutor. He knew I wanted to do this as my job. He knew I cared about this job. This is the best job in the world. I tried to be solicitor 3 times as long. It doesn't get any better than this job. And I find it offensive that the defense, through the defendant, who was also a part-time solicitor, is claiming that law enforcement didn't do their job. Listen to me, please. Didn't do their job while he is withholding and obstructing justice by not saying, I was down at the kennels. I was down at the kennels. I was down at the kennels. And he's going to blame everybody else. Is that offensive? Is that offensive? Mr. Griffin said a minute ago, can you imagine coming up on the scene and seeing, can you imagine not telling law enforcement, lying that I was down there and I saw him, I was right there? Why wouldn't you tell them that? Maybe get some more evidence. Did you hear somebody? No, I wasn't even down there. Credibility, believability. That really does sum it up. You remember 6 weeks ago today when Mr. Waters' fantastic opening and talked about direct evidence. And direct evidence is something you know it when you see it. It's evidence you gather with one of your senses. You hear it, you feel it, you smell it, you touch it, and you come in here and tell witnesses, hey, this is what I heard, what I felt, what I smelled, what I touched. But do you remember when he was describing circumstantial evidence? There was a storm that day coming. Part of his theme, the storm just happened to come. And you could hear it coming. And then during part of his opening, you remember it started raining? You could hear it. You could feel it. It's almost like circumstantial evidence morphed into direct evidence. And that's what happened in this case. Circumstantial evidence became direct evidence in many instances. This case is about two things. It's about being real, and choices. My mama gave me a book when I was a little boy about the Velveteen Rabbit. I was actually going off to college, dealing with people and learning about people and tough times in life. Go get the Velveteen Rabbit and read it if you haven't read it. But you just put in the front of that book, and I love my mama. Always be real. Always be real. In this case is about that defendant never being real. And choices, which I'll get to in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, They blame everybody but Alex. Everybody but Alex. Let's go back to the first. I'm not going to bring it out. But this back here, the press release was sent out. There's no danger. There's no danger. What did Alex not do? They showed a tape there. He's asking the sheriff, I think, to call Buster. First time he tried to call Buster, that took the sheriff a while to get out there. You know when the first time he called Buster? It's about 40 minutes. Well, actually, he texted him, didn't even call him. Wasn't his first thought. Wasn't the thing after he did 911. It was later. Perhaps even when some of his friends had gotten there. Oh, don't call. No, right off the bat, this happened. Call my son. Call him. Buster, stay where you are. You with your girlfriend up there in North Charlotte. Go. We got some people after us. That's what's real. Don't you? You go to the police station right there. And what else do you do too? You don't talk about being real. What do you do? Y'all, I just left my mama. She's with Shelly. Get somebody over there. Get them over there. If these people are out here to kill us, get them over there. Go, please, take them right now. They're by themselves. I can't do that. That's why I took the guns. I can't tell them that. That's what's real. And he brings up the boat case right away. Right away. A year and a half previous. It's coming up for a hearing. Nobody's thinking about that boat case except Alice. And right then, he's using it to throw off. Here's your first suspect. Does that make any sense? They have a hearing coming up. They're going to look into resolve this thing. Nobody's out there thinking about a boat case on a Monday night. Anybody upset about that? Think about all the facts that would have to happen. They'd have to know both, as Mr. Waters said, somebody in the boat case would have to know that they're both there. They'd have to know they were there. They'd have to know that Alex just wasn't there. Oh, no, wait a minute. That he was there, but just for a little bit and went back up to the house. And they'd have to come. You know what? We don't need a gun. There'll be guns there for us to use. Yes, and that's great circumstantial and direct evidence. I'll get to that. They'll have guns there for us. They'll have guns there for us. We can use them. Does that make any sense whatsoever? Let's talk about murder. Murder is the intentional, malicious killing of another living, breathing human being with malice aforethought. What's malice? Y'all know what malice is? It's the name malice. It's the evil wickedness one person shows to another. You know how long it's got to exist? Just like that. It's the pulling of a trigger. 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 Malice aforethought. It can be expressed. Rarely happens. I'm going to kill you. Or it can be inferred. It can be inferred with the use of one gun. There's no claim of self-defense here. They're claiming they weren't there. It can be inferred 2 guns. Malice aforethought. And we don't have premeditation in this state. We don't have to prove premeditation. We don't have to prove motive. I think it's been proven. His world was collapsing. Mr. Griffin goes, does that make sense? In his mind. His world's collapsing. His world's coming down. This was the only way he could save. It's the only way he could save Alex. But if that motive, well, I don't know, is that enough? Don't know. We don't have to prove motive. We're certainly there. That's one explanation. But if he's down there and he's angry, this don't sound like a real jovial there. Bubba! Don't let me forget about Bubba. Bubba! Come here. Maybe he just got angry. Maybe he got angry at Paul. Maybe he got angry, you started all this with the boat case. And maybe he just lost it. Maybe he just lost it. Maybe it looked like a suicide. And then Maggie came and he had to shoot her. I don't know. Only one person knows. And that's why we've got the motive. That's why we say he did it. But we don't even have to have motive. Just angry. He did it. Nobody else could have done it. Nobody else did do it. I'm going to get to that. And that's how we prove beyond, I want to say all doubt. But our burden's only reasonable then. But losing it, and then you get the question, well, have you proven malice? Well, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. 2 shots to Paul. Malicious. First one didn't do it. The second one finishes them all. 5 shots to Maggie. Not an accident. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots, maybe 5 shots, depending on whether this one's running through. That's malicious. So if you find he killed him and you get the malice, I don't think there's any dispute in here about that this is a malicious killing. But I've got to go over that with you. Malice of forethought. And then the burden on us in this case, as in every case that's tried in this wonderful land of ours, that's why this is so great, I agree with, is beyond a reasonable doubt. We're borrowing these waters, if that's okay. It's not beyond all doubt. If that's the case, this courtroom wouldn't have been here historically as long as it had. The law doesn't describe that. And listen to his honor. And I'm not playing up to him. He is the best. He's the law. Listen to him when he reads the law. Beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not beyond all doubt. We can't do that. It's beyond a doubt that would make reasonable folks hesitate to act. I was trying to retrial a case years ago and reading reasonable doubt from this ex-solicitor, Solicitor Wilson, not being great, describing reasonable doubt. And he said, sometimes, questions are just questions. You can't answer every question, and the law doesn't require it. If after hearing all the evidence, you don't, or if you're firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt, you must find him guilty. If, on the other hand, you're not firmly convinced, then you must find him not guilty. He goes to see his mother. He goes, and you see the OnStar taking him up to the side, over near the smokehouse. We submit to you that's when you went to hide the guns. It's common sense. We submit to you that there's a driveway there, nice pavement. You can look at it, nice paved driveway. Submit to you when he came, it was 9:30 at night. Testimony is very unusual, very rare. Kind of funny is Ms. Nixon, who testified earlier, we talked to her recently, didn't remember any of the conversation, but said she called and said he told him your dad's not doing well. Well, he didn't go there that afternoon when he got the phone call, when his office is right near there. Go see him then. He didn't do that. He waited to 9:30. I don't know if anybody's got any folks that are suffering from Alzheimer's, but when they're asleep, they're tired. He wasn't going to love his mama. He wasn't going to be with her. He was going there because he loves Alex. He loves Alex. And he was going there to create his alibi at 9:30 at night. Use your common sense. And you remember, she said he called. What happened after that? Well, it's about 5 minutes or so. At first I was thinking, well, that's when he was going to hide the gun. And the time frame over there is so important, not for how long he was from left to come back, but it's how long he was in there with Shelley. How long he was in there. Because that's when he was hiding the guns. The guns are missing, y'all. He was hiding the guns. And what did Shelley say? He didn't stay long. 15, 20 minutes. He left. And later that week, later that week, and I don't know which one in my mind right now, I'm so tired. But one of the days she came by, I think it was after the visitation, and he says, Shelley, you remember I was here about 35 or 40 minutes. Y'all remember looking at her up here on the scene? And she got visibly upset. So what's wrong? That's what's wrong. What's wrong there? Was he there 35, 40 minutes? No, sir. Why are you upset? It's a good family. You think she knew right then? He's coming back to say, hey, I was here 35, 40 minutes now visiting my mom. Shelley said, no. No, you weren't. So upset that she calls her brother, police officer in Yamasee. You think she knew right then? And that's real. That's real. Shelley's real. You saw her, but body language is so important, right? Body language is so important. We're talking about the defendant. All our body language. You see Shelley's. And then one day that week, never before, ever before, at 6:30 in the morning, doesn't call. He didn't need a timeline to create for that one visit. Didn't want a timeline. Didn't want a record of that. Comes to see Shelley. You ever been over that time before? No. What was he carrying? It was some blue vinyl like Remember I tried to say, it's like this. What do you think it was? A tarp. I don't know what it was. And they try to gloss over it now. Tell you one thing they didn't gloss over. You remember when she was on the stand? I said, well, have you talked to them? Have you talked to their investigators? Yes, sir. Did they record you? Yes, sir. Can I have a copy of it? And then we came back and we got a copy. And 2 investigators, they were worried about it then, went down and talked to her. And talked to her about her times and ran times by her and asked her if she'd ever seen anybody in this blue coat. They were worried about it. But that's great circumstantial evidence. It kind of morphs into direct evidence. I saw him come in at 6:30. You even heard, they asked one of the experts, well, could it stay on there for 5 years, 10 years? Sure. This was days after the murder. Shelley sees him come in with a blue something. Well, where'd he go? He went upstairs. Why? I don't know. Did you see it later? Thought I saw it on the chair. Can't answer every question. Miss Mixon sure didn't see it the next day. Now, actually, was there another tarp there? Well, there was a blue and silver tarp. Picture of it, too. That wasn't it, though. This was all blue. And the only other blue tarp that's in evidence, and I let it go in just so I could argue this right now, is the tarp that they showed Jelly that they got from Kmart. That's not real. This tarp, no. Looked like that. I don't know what it was. He had it bundled up. Well, lo and behold, when we find out this information, and they try to make a big deal about it, I think it makes it more pure. She's at a traffic stop or an accident or something, still a police officer. I forgot about this. You can't make it up. So they get a search warrant and they go search. And lo and behold, crumbled in the closet is a blue vinyl something when you pull it out, and it's this jacket. You see how evidence of a fact and another fact that leads to the fact in question? I don't know why he put it in there. I don't know why he killed his wife and son. I don't have to say why. I think he did it to protect the one he loved the most. The one he really loved the most. So he could keep his lifestyle and not be embarrassed financially. He wanted to keep going and loving Alex. I don't know why he get that jacket. Maybe it was Solicitor Murdaugh's jacket. Certainly consistent. It might have been in that truck. I think one of the family said he kept a lot of stuff in that truck. Might have been out in that something else. I don't know. But he brought it back in there and hid it. 6:30. Days after the killing. And what's inside? What's on the outside? There's a little bit. Gunshot here and there. What's on the inside? The inside. Minimum 38 particles. It got so much that Megan Fletcher finally said, you know, I can't remember the term right now. We get so many, I just stopped. I'd have been there for days. Gunshot resident. Inside the rain jacket, the blue type garment that Shelley said, I saw him carrying something like that. He got rid of the guns and he's hiding it there for some reason. Thank goodness he did. Thank goodness for Shelley for bringing that in. That's what he disposed of the guns with. And went up there. He said he left, and before that, she thought he left and came back and he had moved to ATV, and then he said he was in another truck and he came back, then he left. He's disposing and hiding whatever he was doing with that evidence. Only one person knows. But that blue rain jacket, that tarp, incredible circumstantial evidence that we ask you to consider when you go back there. Is Shelley making that up? How could she make that up? How could she know that a blue tarp in that closet, same closet, same stairs, he went upstairs, we went upstairs. I can't explain the tarp on the chair, don't have to. We can't answer every question. That doesn't mean it's not reasonable doubt. She saw a blue tarp light, it was in that closet, it's got gunshot residue on it a few days after. Maggie, all were brutally murdered. And that's consistent with every reasonable hypothesis. And you know the thing he told Shelley? The night when they were talking. You get married, aren't you? Remember her saying that? You get married. If you need any money or help with it, let me know. It's incredible timing. Oh, and your job, don't you work in school? You know, I've got friends down there. I can help you on that if you need. was there 35, 40 minutes. Can you make up a sequence of facts that lead to the conclusion he's trying to get her to say, I was there longer. I wasn't outside longer. Blanca. Blanca loved Maggie. I didn't realize that really until I talked to her just a few times. I met her years ago in a federal prison. Remember when I saw her? Remember her name. But you know, even when Blanca was quit working for him for a while, and you remember she had health problems and said she saw Maggie on the road somewhere. And they kind of pulled off and just talked. Just called up. Blanca cared about Maggie. Knew her so well, she knew what she wore to bed and what she didn't wear to bed. And that kind of bothered her about the clothes that were laid out. Some undergarments, which she knew she didn't wear. But Blanca's texting Maggie. Maggie's texting Blanca on June 7th. And in one of his statements, and I'm going to get to those, he said, you know, Maggie wanted to come. She wanted to come. Well, no, sir. No, she didn't. She was having worked on the data stuff. He tried to say in here today, look, she was in Charleston. She was going back data stuff. Remember the text of Blanca, well, I left the workers there, I guess it'll be okay. He had said, come, I want you to come. She didn't want to come. We also know that from her sister Mary, who had a little regret in here today. Didn't hear much regret from over there. You know who regretted? Who was real? It was Mary. I encouraged her to go. She didn't want to go. They got clucked. You know, it's like siblings. Jane, Marshall, James, I had to get my siblings on the record. We love each other. But you had that relationship, you know, we weren't close. Then we got closer as the kids got older. We were close. We talked. One of her best friends. And she told her, why don't you go on over there? She regretted that. But she killed her about it. But that refutes his lie. Oh, she wanted to come. She wanted to come. That's what you wanted to come. Why? Had he already planned it out? Was his world collapsing? He didn't have to. We don't have to prove he did. But he got her there. He wasn't planning on it. Blanca's got the food ready. She leaves. Stay on the real train for a minute. She goes home. She gets a call sometime that night. And this is real. What did she do when she hears? She drops the phone. Remember that? Her husband had to get on the phone. She dropped the phone. Real emotion. Because she cared about Maggie. That's real. And you remember she described that day when she left Alex leaving and I put his shirt up, got his collar, helped me with his, I assume it was a blue jacket, I don't know. Described the shirt. Remember, just kind of put it in. And now on Alex's second interview, when he's confronted by David Owens. And they actually showed him the video of the tree. They showed him that. Did you change? When I saw you that night, you were wearing shorts. When did you change? And you remember what Alex said on that interview? When is that? You sure that? When is that time? Was that? And then he told him the time, 7:44, whatever it was. He said, I guess I changed after that. Well, those are the clothes he was wearing when he murdered Maggie and Paul. Those are the clothes. And what does Blanca tell us? That was on August 11th. She said sometime mid-August. I didn't know this. You can't make it up. Sometime mid-August, he comes to see her. Do you remember that shirt when I left that day? I said, no. I mean, yes. It's a Vinnie Vine shirt. You weren't wearing a Vinnie Vine shirt. I fixed your collar. He tries to get her to tell what he was wearing. He tried to say, no, you weren't wearing that shirt. That Columbia shirt, you got one of those. But guess what? I ain't seen that one since. I have not. Blanca and Shelley. That's straight circumstantial. Did you ever see that shirt again? Never saw that shirt. Ever. Where's the shirt? You know what? I forgot about Shelley. I don't think this was mentioned. When Shelley sees Alex that night, you remember what she said about his clothes? Shorts, shirt. What did you say about his shoes? Sperry type, cloth shoe. You remember that? When Dave Owens and those get there, and when I think I was going to put some of the dust out on those aren't Sperry shoes. He's changed his shoes again. I'll get to you in a minute why that's important. When we want to visit his mom, he's got Sperry type shoes. He comes back, puts on the tennis shoes. Why? I think, is she making that up? Martha said, I've never seen the sheets before. When I got there the next morning, there was a t-shirt looked like it'd been pulled down, fell on the floor. Where does he keep? She washes her clothes. Those are clean shorts up there. This is where he kept the shorts. Did he wear these shorts much? No, he didn't wear them much, but she knows that family. She knows where the shorts are, where the shoes are. Do you remember the Sperry shoes? Yeah. Did you see those? You never saw them again. Never saw that shirt again that he was wearing in the video. Never saw it again. And when he confronted her at the house about what he was wearing, she had real feelings and told y'all about that and told law enforcement about that. Is that real? Then why is that important? Because it goes back to credibility and common sense. Those were clean clothes that Shelly had washed. Excuse me, that Blanca had washed. And when we get there on the scene that night, you remember Laura? Ms. Rutten. She's sitting in the back. David's in the front. Alex in the front. His lawyer's on the side. And you know, it's something else I don't understand. Your wife and your son have just been killed, and you're worried about having a lawyer around you. I said, well, you know, they're sled agents. We need to have a lawyer around. Really? My wife and son have just been butchered, and I'm worried about having a lawyer. But they did. And that threatening, overbearing, cheating, manipulating. Remember when I asked old Dave? Put his hand on his shoulder. So did Laura. What are you doing? I got a heart. Is that rushing to judgment? I got a heart. Didn't rush to judgment. They were saying, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. Well, and he starts looking at his phone. You can check my phone, the alibis that he's created, that he's doing. And he says, I went and ran. I got on my knees over here. Went and ran, and I tried to take the pulse of Paul. I'd still be on the ground, I'll get myself. And I tried to turn him over. Trying to check his pulse. Really? I went to Maggie, checked her pulse. And you can't do that in the 20 seconds he's now trying to say you can. You can't. And they've tried to change that. And he never did it. Because what did she say? What did Miss Rutland say? He was clean, he was clean, he was clean, he was clean. He washed up. Yeah, and you hear the water running in the dog video. You hear it. He washed up. And this phone, I tried to make a big deal about this phone that you saw, you do see right afterwards when we know he was down there. There's some movement on Maggie's phone. But every expert has said, just because if one phone's down here and the other one's walking, you're not going to have steps on that phone. He took Maggie's phone, the golf cart, however he got, drove back up to get those shorts and that shirt. And yes, you can get it and manipulate it and call to see if you made a call, put it down. That's not going to record steps on that phone because it's not moving. But that doesn't mean it wasn't with his phone. Don't fall for that. That's not real. Every expert said that. Every expert said that. And doesn't that make sense? You can grab it, see, make a call, put it down. You keep walking, it's not going to record. If it's there, if it's in the car, it's in the Suburban. And I'm getting to that. So what happened? And this is why I asked Ms. Rutland. And they're bringing in drug use. If he did as many pills as he said if he did, you can't take that many pills. That's your common sense. But why I asked her this, I'm asking, I want to look at every one of y'all. Tell me what he was like in that car. You got the video. Did he appear to understand you? Yes. Were his answers timely? Yes. Were they subject matter appropriate? Yes. Do you understand him? He can understand you. Look, he's thinking. He's opening the door. Was he in his right mind? Of course he was. And why is that so important? He says he didn't go down there. Is that enough? Yes. With everything else, that's enough. I never went down there. He's in his right mind. I never went down there, Dave. I never went down there, Lord. I never went down there after supper. I stayed up. I took a nap. He goes from taking a nap from 6-7. The next time they met, 6-10. I took a nap. August 15th. You sure you're down there? All right, up there taking a nap. I took a nap. I never went down there. Never, ever, ever. You think he would have taken the stand and said, you know, I was down there, y'all. If that video hadn't come out on that phone. Well, no. Now, under Mr. Waters' cross-examination, I lied. Why'd you lie? I wrote it down. I'm still not clear. I had paranoid thoughts. Usually I can take a deep breath and get through it. But I couldn't, so I just lied. Once I lied, I continued to lie. And he continued and continued and continued until 627 days later when he took the stand, the first time he'd ever told anybody. Anybody. He told his family, he told his friends, he told everybody, and they believed him. I wasn't down there. Why is that so critical? That's the time of death. That's when it happened. That's what the records show. That's when the conversation, yes, it is important. Paul, who uses his phone all the time, Paul was in a conversation about the dogs, interacting with, send me the picture. He does. And then it stops. Yes, that's what it happened. And then Maggie's phone, a little bit text, she reads that text. I think she went to her car. Y'all decide. Nobody knows. One person knows. She goes to her car, and she's got some rings there she's putting back on. I think she's got 2 rings there, and she's putting on another in the car. Maybe they've been working in the kennels. There's one shoe. There's only one shoe. And she hears that shot, and she comes back around. She hears the shot. She reads the last text y'all have in there. I think she opens the thing about Solicitor Murdaugh. He doesn't. And then you don't see anything else. You don't see anything else on the phone. So is that common sense? Yes, when they were gone? Yes. Yes. When they interact so much? Yes. That's common sense. And that's why it's so important. You want to help law enforcement? You're in law enforcement? I was down there. Y'all know what? I was down there. I didn't take that nap as long as I did. Did you hear anything? Why would you not give that information? Okay, then the 10th, with his lawyer, Mr. Griffin, in the car. Did you go down there? No. Look at him. Is he coherent? Is he under the influence of anything? Is he withdrawing? No. I want to help you. I want to help you. And then on the 15th, here's this video. Here's you in the tree. Now, Rogan says he thought he heard you down there earlier. Well, I don't think so. Why not say it then? Think about it. Well, it's just Rogan's word. Does that make any sense? Just Rogan's word. No, sir, I can handle that. He made a mistake, like Shelley did. Like lock it and close. No, sir. I can handle that, though. But when the video comes out, he's stuck. He's stuck. I'm going to try to wrap up. Yeah. Yesterday morning at 2:53 in the morning, I don't sleep much during trials, but I kind of woke up. And what he did when he took the stand was corroborated that he's a liar. He corroborated the fact he doesn't tell the truth. The one thing that was more important than anything. And you know, they're putting these law enforcement on trial, talking about blood evidence, talking about other things that were presented to the grand jury, which that blood evidence was investigated and the state didn't offer it. That's what you do in your prosecution. Didn't try to offer it. Now they're trying to put us on trial for doing our job. Think about that. Blame everybody else. Look, they looked into this and it didn't turn out to be. So now we're going to blame them. We didn't try to present it. Isn't that ironic? They're now jamming us for doing our job. Jamming us for doing our job. All the evidence of the guns. I'm going to pick that. The incredible timeline, his lies, all of that, the gunshot residue, all of that's presented. And do we make mistakes? Yes. And that happens in life. But you don't lie and misremember being at the scene of a murder when you said you weren't even there, or being at the scene where your family was brutally murdered. You don't lie about that. That's not a mistake. That's not a mistake. This is the state of South Carolina versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, not the state versus David Owens, not versus Sled. And I want to tell you something. Sled, Walterboro, Laura Rutland's working with David Owens. Sled starts working with the FBI. They're working together. This is, think about it. Rush to judgment. They gave that man every benefit of the doubt. Oh, what are y'all doing? How's it going? You remember that third interview when he was David Owens said, well, and I submit to you, they're taking those interviews where he's trying to come find out what they've got on him. Well, how's this thing looking? How's this thing looking? Well, we've got some shell casings by Maggie's body out over there where y'all shot in the range, and some shots out there by the side of the house. The shell casings, they all were came from the same gun, all cylinder in the same gun. You think if they didn't, they could find an expert to refute that they would have? And Alex goes, oh, really? So the gun was there? Yeah. You see his reaction? They all came from the same gun on Maggie. Now, the other one, Mr. Griffin tried to argue. Paul Greer, yeah, it could have come from that shotgun. Don't know. Is that credible evidence? But it could have. Not saying it did or did, but it certainly could have. He's got that gun. It's got Maggie's blood on it. Don't know if he used that or not. But I know the assault rifle was missing. And Will Loving comes from a fine family in Columbia. I can tell you that. Says we were down here not in March. It was more like April or May. We were shooting his gun on the side of the house and no shell casings. That's where they found them. And lo and behold, the shell casing matched the shell casings around Maggie. They were all all similar to the same gun. They came out of the same gun. They've been the same gun. Yes, Mr. Waters is right. That's a family-owned gun. And is that incredible, circumstantial, and direct evidence? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes. That's powerful. You can feel it like the rain. The murderers come in. There'll be a gun there. We'll just use their gun. Does that make any sense? Y'all too young. You ever watch Columbo? When I first looked at this case, this is an episode of Columbo, except this is real. And you get to see one of my heroes, the detective, didn't always look that good, wasn't all that, but you got to see the crime, and then you got to see them figure it out, and the mistakes they made. And that's what happened here. He killed him. He thought he could get a timeline, but it got him. Within 20 seconds, he's texting Maggie on that phone when he's passing the location of the phone. Is it common sense? He threw that phone out, called her, and threw it, and the orientation didn't go on. They said, if you pick it up, yes. And we had somebody come in here, you throw it rough, and it doesn't come on. And one of the chances is anything else. He'd almost had to bump into him. And you take this new story, I was down there till 8:50, whatever, go and take a quick nap, come back. He didn't hear the shots, just happens to come back. It's common sense. Don't leave it with you. Take it back there with you. I'm down there now. My wife told me this. I'm down there under this new story, and the deal was to come talk, go see my mama at 9:30, and you're right down there. You've just seen them now. Well, you said, before we hadn't even seen them, don't forget that. And you go up to the house. Why don't you say, hey, Max, I'm going to go see Mom real quick. It's just a few minutes later. No, you go up there, you take a quick nap. You know what? I'm going to try to call them, let them know I'm going down. Does that make any sense? And then when you get to the why, you'll see the light. When y'all went out there yesterday, those trees are much lower. Go back in and look at the way it was. And I think even Buster said, when you get down there, if the light's on, you can see. Why don't you just go right over there? Hey, I ain't going down there. No, doesn't hear anything, doesn't do anything. He just takes off. Does that make any sense? We've proved that nobody else could. Put that kind of mind. Does it matter when he's rushing back? Yeah. I doubt he's ever killed 2 people before. So he's not thinking, he's frantic. Puts the wrong 2 shells in the gun. Coming back, he's got Maggie's phone. It had been sitting there. That's why the steps weren't on there. He's moving. He gets it. I can't take this phone with me. He's a lawyer, so he tosses it out. That's the only thing that makes sense. And what did he say about Paul's phone? When I started to get, I didn't know I got it out, and then it kind of just popped out too. Does that make any sense? You got to evaluate everything. You can't believe somebody's credible. One thing, how can you believe them on the ultimate issue when they said they didn't? When the only thing they corroborated for you throughout the investigation, throughout this trial, and throughout Mr. Waters' cross-examination is he's a liar. And that's all you can judge people on. The 3 witnesses that were beautiful, that were uncontroverted. And one was Paul. He didn't testify to you up on the stand, but he testified to Dr. Raymer, and he testified to his father. And it's so beautiful of evidence. It's so pure. He didn't know he took that video. That's why he said he went down there. And this is beyond all that. We respectfully submit. Paul knew. Dad, I got some insurance. Not the kind of insurance you've made money off of. An insurance, some clients you gave back, some you didn't. I've got some insurance on you. I don't know why you killed me. I made some mistakes. You heard a lot of good things about Paul, too. I know I put your life, open your life, your fake life with this boat case. Your finances are coming out. I know that. But if you go lie and say you weren't down here, I got you. I don't know when it'll come out. Maybe you'll go ahead and lie. But this is going to come out. Paul had that insurance on him. Maybe that's why he was worried about that phone. And you can't make that up. Because you remember when I asked David Owens, does anybody else in the world know that that video was out there except Paul? No, sir. And that's incredible evidence. And it did sit there until law enforcement working together, the states, the local, SLED, everybody, got it out. And that's great law enforcement. Thank you. Yes, and that's when the case changed, along with all the other. Maggie testified to you. He shot me here. And look at all the shell cases around there. Y'all look at them. They're the same ones that Will Loving shot with Paul. They're the same ones that have been shot down there. Yeah. They came out of the same gun. That's great directive circumstance. And finally, and my daughter-in-law Sally, and my Aunt Cissy still calls my dad Jack this. My daughter-in-law been married about 3 months, one of the happiest days of my life, because they were happy. They were watching that kennel video. She and her dog Tater. And when Bubba started to bark, that's what my aunt calls him, bad Bubba. Tater bark. And Sally said, "Isn't it something that your best witness in here of the dog?" You know, some people say they got a sixth sense. You think Bubba knew? You think Bubba knew something? You got Alex. Just say something. Bubba! Thank God for Bubba. DNA, and that DNA, when people live together, you'll have it all over your shirt. That's not it. The DNA, in this case, that dog negates all. Thank you, Bubba. And guess where Bubba is now? Bubba's with Blanca. Bubba's with Blanca. You can't make that up. And that puts him down there. And that's a lie he told and told and told. I went down there. Why aren't y'all doing something law enforcement? Why aren't you telling us you were down there? Why aren't you telling us you were down there? Thank you. If he tried to respond to the phone, as Mr. Griffin said, it would show that he was going to Malmere. He had to get rid of that phone. He had to get rid of it there. Finally, it's about your greatest power. My dad gave it to me when I was young. He said, "Read it. Your greatest power." You know what it is? Your greatest power is your power to choose. Choice. We've all got it. We're born with it. We use it every day. We use it when we treat people, whether we say, hey, whether we're nice, whether we forgive people. We make good decisions. We make bad decisions. But what my dad always told me, don't blame anybody else. If you make a good choice, that's good. Don't get too cocky. Be humble, but that's good. But if you make a bad choice, you're responsible for it. The consequences. It's your greatest power. And for whatever was going on in his mind, his world's collapsing. He's coming down. All these worlds coming down financially. He's confronted that day by somebody's law firm. Where's his check? He's got another hearing coming up. His motive. Don't have to have it. But yeah, it's there. And is this rational? When he said that, is that rational? Was it rational to be on the side of the road and claim you're shot? And when you're in the ambulance, and now watch this, if you're talking to the officer in the ambulance, and you say, what happened? Oh, by the way, when he killed himself, he called 911. He called 911. When he told the officer in the ambulance, well, what happened? Well, some guy shot me. He even did a sketch. He faked the sketch. And what did he tell the guy in the ambulance? It sounded like a shot. He's trying his world. And he says there in that last interview with Mr. the call-in interview, Mr. Harpoon and Mr. Griffin, what you got in there. Ryan, I'm sorry. I lied about everything. I was under a lot of pressure. Had a lot going on. Really? Your wife and your son were murdered 3 months ago. And now this is the real Alex. Well, my world's coming down. My world, Alex's world is coming down. Been confronted by his law partners. Losing his job. Now it's me. My world's being affected. Not about that, but now. I'm sorry, I lied about everything. Richard Alexander Murdaugh loved, I think he loved Maggie. I think he loved Paul. But you know who he loved more than that? You know who he loved more than that? And who he's going to make sure that life, wanted to make sure that life, he loved Alex. And he exercised his greatest power of choice to make sure that life continued. Or try. And it couldn't. And now, ladies and gentlemen, after his honor charges you, you're going to go back there and exercise your greatest power. Based on the evidence you've heard, the evidence you haven't heard, the credibility, the believability of the witnesses, and especially of Richard Alexander Murdaugh, who has lied and lied and lied and lied. And it's been okay. It got you through. It stops here. We respectfully request it stops here today. No, it's not a day. And we're going to exercise our greatest power and find you guilty of killing Maggie and Paul. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've now heard the evidence and you have heard the closing arguments. Next up will be jury charge and then your deliberations. We're at lunchtime. We're going to take a break for 1 hour and 15 minutes for lunch, and you'll come back. I'll charge you on the law, then you will deliberate. Please do not discuss the case.
John Metters with the State Attorney General's office saying he's a liar.
Okay, guys. So it's 2:20. Obviously, they are. We're gonna light. Oops. Hold on. My bad. Okay, so we're going to move in time, and here we are. We probably advanced about at least 45 minutes to an hour. Looks like they're still on lunch. I don't know if you guys want to take a break. I'm gonna just go ahead and let this keep going. At the end of the day, this has been very interesting. I'm just going to give you a little high level. Hi, Taylor. Hey, Boo Boo. Hi, JC. Columbo would have had this wrapped already. Shoot. Columbo, Matlock, Jessica from Murder, She Wrote, SVU, Ice-T, the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, everybody, Scooby and Scrappy. Okay, everybody would have had this together at the moment. Anyway, look, I'm sorry. I don't even want to say look, Alex, sorry, not sorry. Your defense closing argument was awful. I don't know if brother did not get a good dinner. He didn't sleep. He was nervous. You guys argued. I don't know what happened before he came to give probably one of the most important presentations of his life. In an extremely high profile case, defending a friend and a return client, all of the things, but he stumbled and bumbled over that whole entire defense close. Girl, when the state came back for the, I don't know what they call that, the redress or whatever, I think that they chose someone who was able to be super duper folksy and down home and really just kind of explain the law and put the story together. So what Crichton Waters did yesterday, broke it down step by step, the law. Jim tried to tiptoe, tap dance, whatever. And then the state, a second attorney, forgive me, I don't know his name. This other gentleman who just finished up, really was able to kind of articulate a story and give some reasons and some compelling reasons as to, like, everything's not just a damn coincidence. I mean, you actually have to be there. All of those things. So I feel like that was like some real compelling stuff. So anyway, guys, I'm going to let y'all take a break. I'm going to put this on, you know what? Let's go ahead. Maybe I'll just go ahead and shut this one down. I feel like we'll be basically right back because this has been going for a minute. It looks like probably they broke right around 45. So maybe about a half an hour. So let's go ahead and shut this one down. I don't even know if it's worth coming back with the jury instructions. It might be interesting if you guys are interested in jury instructions, but maybe when I come back, we can watch that. I need to take a break for a bit because I sat here all morning. Anyway, but there was some news. I do believe Tim Norman was sentenced today. I think he got life for the murder of his nephew, Miss Robbie's grandson from Sweetie Pies. And this would be the son of her son who was murdered many years ago, and now Tim, her youngest son, is going to be in prison for life. Now this is his second felony situation. This is his second time going to prison, put it that way, and for the murder for hire of his nephew, his only brother's son, who died many, many years ago. and maybe in a plot of greed and money and finance and insurance policies and all different kinds of things. So I will get all the deets on that and we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think I'm going to shut this one down. Next up will be jury instructions. So I don't know if you guys want to just watch that on your own. You guys let me know in the comments if you want this to come back and I'll put up another. It's just we're approaching a long time, 3.5 hours. So I just kind of want to shut this one down. It's too long. And then maybe the jury instructions, or we can just come back for a quick chat and breeze through it later in a few hours after they're done and kind of dissect what happened and maybe just get caught up on what we know is going on even outside of this. So Alex, we got Tory Lanez, I think got pushed back. He was supposed to be sentenced. I think that got pushed back. Tim Norman got his sentencing. So, there's stuff going on. We can certainly talk about it. You guys let me know if I don't see anything in the chat. That's cool. You guys can let me know in the comments, but I'll be back like in a few hours. I just need to get a little bit of a rest. And I think we've seen the crux of what's most important here. Obviously, the jury instructions are super important. If you are watching this and you're here at this moment, I will share this in the first pinned comment, but this is kind of a cheat sheet list of people to know from this trial. If you're a little bit lost on who everyone is and haven't been following this whole thing, there was someone who mentioned the young man who was found dead in the road, Stephen Smith. My impressions of that is that Buster and Alex were out. And I don't know if that was not Buster and Alex, Buster and Paul were up to some shenanigans. And I don't know enough. They said that this was someone that Buster could have been allegedly having some sort of relationship with. And they got together one night and went for him. I'm not sure, but it's a very sad story amongst many others of the footprint of the Murdaugh family. So no doubt that there's a lot of heartbreak for a lot of the people who came into contact with these people, including Mrs. Murdaugh and unfortunately Paul, who was born into that thing, and Maggie, who married in. And but anyway, guys, like I said, I'm kind of fading a little bit. I'm extremely exhausted after this long live. So I hope that you guys have a good afternoon. I'll come back. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to come back and talk about. Otherwise, we'll meet again out here. I will go live again on this matter, like I said, either later, maybe even tomorrow at this point. But you guys let me know how you want to do things as far as this conversation is concerned. If you want to come back and talk about it in a couple of hours, and we can go over the jury instructions and then just kind of get caught up on the things I just mentioned. Anyway, guys, take care. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. This was so much fun, and I cannot wait to hear the jury's verdict. And when that does happen, I will be going live again on this topic, okay? So make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure that your notifications are set so that the next time I go live on this topic, you will be notified immediately, okay? Take care. Bye, guys.